Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Canon podcast, your home on the Star Wars Underworld podcast network for in-depth discussion on the lore, the High Republic, and the whole galaxy far, far away. My name is Matthew, and I am coming to you live from the Underworld North Studio in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. As always, I'm joined across the continent by your friend of mine down in Underworld, Orange County, Mr. Joel Davis. How are you doing this week, Joel?
I'm doing good. It is nice and bright outside because we had daylight savings time. Sure, it ruins your sleep schedule, but at least it's nice and sunny for a good chunk of the day.
I was worried. I was worried the time change would kick my behind, kick my donkey. It was okay. It wasn't bad, and especially I got to go outside after and enjoy the
I know.
sun. Go pick
Yay!
up a burger. It was great. All right. I can get plugs out of the way. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Ion Cannon Pod. EYEONCANONPOD. I just added a story on the Instagram account. Newsflash. It's about tonight's episode. It's fun. Anyway, yeah, you can follow us there. We got things tweeting away, hopefully Instagramming away, threading away every now and then. But yeah, it'll be fun. Also, of course, here on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel, we got what are those called? We got super chats, we got YouTube memberships. Check us out, help us out. Of course, every comment we try and get to, but if you give us a super chat, we will bump you up to the top of the line and get to you as soon as humanly possible. Get to your comment, your question as soon as humanly possible. So please do support the channel. I'll get to one thing that we might those funds might go to in a minute, but before that, we also got the Star Wars Underworld Discord server. Joel and I are definitely in there chatting away. Again, I make my guarantee. You make a comment, you tag Joel Davis in there, he will respond to you within a few hours, guaranteed. Probably less than a few hours. Oh, definitely spam Ben all the time. Give just comment lots on what Ben this, Ben that. Just every comment you make, just spam Ben. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. That'd be that would not get us kicked out, but you'd find it funny for a minute. Anyways, speaking of the Discord, though, I think something's happening this week. What's going on in Discord?
Oh yes, this Friday we are going back to game night. We are doing our Fortnite. We are returning to Fortnite after a long hiatus of not Fortniting. So yes, we'll be doing that. We were originally going to have a marathon night last Friday, the Friday before that, but Ben couldn't make it, and I wanted to do Fortnite this week. So yes, Fortnite, we're back! Yay!
And I mean, how's the Young Jedi Adventures? Watch through all that.
Good, slow goings, but we're good. We always have fun.
That's good. That's good to know. Right on. So yeah, check out the link below for and get your way into the Discord server. It's just right there. Just the link. Come in and say hi. The water's fine. Treat each other kindly and respectfully. And if you have your opinion, That's great. We'll have the banter, have the discussion. I'm in there. Speaking of banter discussion, Tractor Beam Comics Reviews. Normally, this is the point I'd say Wednesdays are for comics and comics are for Wednesdays, but I'm going to a birthday party on Wednesday night. So I'm going to a good friend of mine. And so we're pushing it back to the new old time just for this week. Maybe next week. We'll see, because Chris is down at PAX East in Baston at a con next week. So we'll see what we do then. But this week we're going to go back to our old time, 12:15 p.m. Eastern. So grab your lunch, grab your comics, grab your breakfast, grab your comics, and watch us chat about a few books on the way. We're definitely going to talk. I don't quite remember right now. There's a few. There's a three.
I think the Vader one. Yay.
Vader 44. I think High Republic Adventures number 4. And then possibly I forget something else. Well, maybe it's Django or Mace Windu.
Nice.
I don't remember. Well, we'll figure it out. I just get a lot crammed in my brain. You know how that works. But yeah, so check that out Thursday at 12:15 p.m. Eastern time, 9:15 a.m. Pacific. Just for this week and maybe for next week. Yeah, we'll mention this past week High Republic number 4. That will come up later in the show. So stay tuned. But yeah, definitely check out last week's Tractor Beam as well. I will refer to that for back to that. But yeah, that's, I guess, is that the plugs? Did I get the plugs? Did I get them all? I think I got them all. Yeah, there we go. I forgot to do the intro. I forgot to just say what we're actually talking about today.
Oh
Right.
no! What are we talking about? Nothing? Is it? Is it? Are we going Seinfeld on everybody? Exist.
Yeah, this was our friends episode. No, we're How About Your Mother episode. Because we're 47 years after Star Wars took over the culture, and 25 years after the Phantom Menace. Phantom Menace in 25, after it brought George Lucas's saga back to the big screen. So, understanding of the galaxy far, far away and its relationship to our own world has definitely changed. But there's some things that are consistent, some things that have stayed the same, I think. And so, we can look at that. We look at what's different, what's changed. But we're not doing that. We are carrying the logic through to a thought experiment. We are asking, what will Star Wars fans and commentators be talking about 30 years from now in 2054? Yeah, just wondering, what's that about? What are we going to care about? What are we going to think about?
Will we be alive to see
Will
it?
we still be alive to see it? Or World War III actually, take us all out. Who knows? Let's hope not.
I mean,
guess I can laugh.
Rome will fall, but Rome will live.
After the Oscars last night, you never know, right? I'll get to that in a minute too, because I have things to say. Anyways, so yeah, that's what we're talking about this week. Before we do that, let's dive into our week in Star Wars, and Joel, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so for this week, I've been doing some thinking of so how we always talk about Star Wars and Star Trek and how like one's like very pro institution and the other more cynical. And I got to thinking, are we looking too much? And when we talk about that, maybe we're framing the discourse wrong. Are we thinking too much about institutions themselves, or are we maybe looking at a difference between Star Trek is the idea of a future in which humankind has gotten better and we move past all our weirdness and like we don't have greed or bigotry.
Right.
Basically, I think Star Trek's a big fantasy, and Star Wars, which is more realistic, which is just our world, but with space wizards and aliens. It's like people suck. Sometimes those people who suck get into power. Congrats! Now you have an evil dictator who rules all, and it's like, there's still greedy people, and there's some nice people, and like, people stink. So, it's a little bit more in a weird way. Star Wars is more realistic in how it defines society as, hey, we got some good times, question mark, and then we have human race kind of just declines and has some really bad times and always has new creative ways to destroy each other. While Star Trek thinks, one day humankind will get past that. So, of course, we're not going to question the institutions. Everyone in the Federation are perfect little angels. Where, of course, we're not. We've gone past ways to find that even though we have technology, we've gone also past ways to kill each other. And we're not interested in that. Well, Star Wars is like, humankind will always find new creative ways to destroy each other. And sometimes those institutions will reflect that. So, because, like, of course, you're not going to trust the Senate when almost half the people there are corrupt, and we just have a lot of corrupt people. So, I think anything is not about institutions. I just think it's more like Star Trek's got this thing about being a positive future that humans have gotten good. And Star Wars is like, no, this is what humanity's like now. And it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
It always has.
I mean, I'll get into this for our main topic, but the Gene and George were doing two different things at two different times, a decade apart. Gene went into it, like believing, the John Lennon thing. What if we have nothing to kill or die for? No religion too. Everything will be great, hunky dory. And then 10 years later, Vietnam happens, and wait a minute.
Vietnam was happening.
Vietnam was happening. I guess Gene was kind of ignoring Vietnam. It was like, we'll get past that. We'll get over that. As long as we come together in a common reason. Look, I think they both represent two different aspects, different sides of things. The Federation is what the institution could be, just like the Republic during the High Republic. I mean, it's called the High Republic for a reason. It's what the institution could be and could become, both the Republic and the Jedi, what they could be. And of course, the prequels especially. I mean, I know you'll squabble with this, but The prequels, especially, are what they became. And to your caveat, your constant, the thing you've constantly raised over the last few months is, it's not that the Jedi are inherently corrupt or evil. It's that they're mixed. It's just all be realistic and ambiguous and ambivalent, and lean into things, lean into the way stories can lean into the ways that they're more heroic, and stories can lean into the ways that they're more villainous-ish, if but yeah, I mean, Palpatine. That's the thing we see about Star Wars is the institution. uh, the first thing we hear about really the institution in Star Wars in 1977 is the Emperor's dissolved the Senate, dissolved the last vestiges of this democratic republic, because we just rule by fear of this battle station. And yeah, um, but again, as stories have been built out from that, 47 years ago, it's been that long. Yeah, we've had a more complicated picture and told more complicated stories because in different, more complicated times. And again, I think about this for both Star Trek and Star Wars. They both, especially over the last few years, have responded and said, no, we actually need to tell aspirational stories. It's no accident, I think, that the tail end of Discovery and High Republic come along at the same time. And and even that we're starting to see Mon Mothma stories, if you will, and stories about maybe the new Republic doing well or doing some good, because we need those aspirational stories too, and it can't all be doom and gloom. So it's a good question. I mean, the deeper one is, what's the relationship between human nature and the institutions that we inhabit? uh and it's not a one-way street. We can't assume it's a one-way street. The medium is the message,
I
and the
mean, it's
content
sort
is
of
the
the
audience.
question of like,
Yeah,
are institutions themselves inherently flawed, or the people in them?
right,
Although I
that's
don't know. Although I don't know. It's like, then I feel like you can take that to the opposite extreme. It's like, well, if
yeah.
we get rid of Palpatine and put in a decent person as emperor, then the Empire should be fine. So
Well, the question, what I mean by it is a two-way street, it's not a one-way street, is, people make institutions, but institutions affect people.
that's yeah, exactly.
And I mean, that's what I mean by medium is the message. you know uh how you pass a law, how it becomes a law, um determines a lot of what that law is, right? So that's why democracy is a good idea. Yeah.
Right.
So
But that's it.
fantastic.
That's my
Yeah, it was a good thought. Good thought. Definitely something we're gonna keep on talking about. It's a very classic Iron Canon question. Yeah. So there's that. From yours to, I guess, kind of different. My three, two of my 3 points have next to nothing to do with Star Wars, but you know, I've got an online platform. I'm going to use it. I saw Dune. Finally saw Dune. I guess I saw it opening weekend, but I didn't see it in IMAX. This
oh.
is related to Star Wars. It's definitely,
Well,
you know,
Dune is an inspiration of Star
it's
Wars.
a direct inspiration. I mean, that's, one of the most immediate and direct inspirations. And part two really bears that out. That interesting question. I mean, here's Paul Atreides, supposedly the hero. He creates this institution of a unified, uh, what's the people called, Fremen, a unified Fremen. He creates this institution, takes on the institution of the Empire, and it's in that institution. Yeah, there's corruption, but also Leto found his way in it. So there's some things. There's some parallels with Luke. Uh, I mean, that's obvious. That's meant to happen there. But also, I think the way Villeneuve shot it. I think Dom was pointing this out. Paul on the hill with the black cape, and Timothy Chalamet's hair. There's a bit of Vader there. There's a bit of My New Empire in that, a bit of Anakin in that. So I thought, as a film, I'll just say, because I want to talk about what I felt as a film. Next year, every Oscars, every award, just watch out. It's so tight. It's so well put together. It's so clear and accessible of a plot, but not spoon fed either. Not kind of banal. It's really, yeah, it was a really, really fun, enjoyable ride that was also rich, just like kind of like The Last Jedi in that way. So that's my 1 second review of a film that's not Star Wars, but Star Wars adjacent. Speaking of things that are not at all Star Wars, the Oscars. I just want to mention again. This has nothing to do with Star Wars, but I have a platform on the internet, so I'm going to say Barbie, my film of 2023, won one Oscar. It's won one award, but it won the whole dang night. I mean, I guess and this is kind of related to Star Wars that never wins any of the big Oscars. It never gets nominated. I wonder.
Godzilla won an Oscar, so that's close enough for
Yeah,
me.
Godzilla won the special effects, which is pretty good. But yet again, the whole bias uh, against any kind of more imaginative sci-fi fantasy. And if there was a film to really do well in that, was Barbie, because it's only a thin fantasy. And again, it didn't win. It won one award for one song. It was nominated for 2 songs. The funniest moment was Kate McKinnon and America Ferrera. The by far, we all agree, the best moment was Ken. It was Ryan Gosling singing Ken. And then the music at the end, the outro music and everything. So definitely won the night, even if it only won one Billie Eilish's song. Yeah, I mean, with Dune, with Star Wars, with who knows what, there's hope. I know. I'm guessing Star Wars does better at the Emmys nowadays, and so we'll see. I think my sense. I don't know.
I'm trying to figure. I think so. I think they've been at least nominated for some
Yeah,
Emmys.
I could
Andor probably will has been.
Yeah, and that's partly. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how Mandalorian and Grogu do. It'll be interesting to see how.
I think it really gotta depend. To comment a little bit about the Oscars and Oscar politics. It really gotta depend on like the type of movie. Like, we talked a little about this a little bit. Last Jedi is very much a very artsy Star Wars film.
Yeah.
Compared to what probably the Mandalorian and Grogu would be.
Sure.
I mean, not that that's the bad thing inherently, of course.
They're just different.
It's just different. But in terms of like Oscar politics, Last Jedi and Andor have kind of more the prestige award, the artistic kind of win thing compared to Mandalorian and Grogu, which is more a popcorn fun B movie. That's lots of fun action and some good characters.
Yeah.
It's the difference between like a Black Panther and other Marvel films.
No, I will admit I haven't seen Poor Things, and that does seem also fantasy sci-fi-esque. So, and that one cleaned up for sure. So, did Oppenheimer deserve it? I don't know. I mean, it's that film doesn't connect to me as much as Barbie did, clearly, but to other people, and it's a very Oscar-esque film. I understand why it won. It's just, I love Barbie more, so I'm biased.
I mean, that's what I'm talking about. It's the more artsy.
Yeah.
Auteur director. Even though Greta Gerwig is an auteur director in her own right too, but that's a whole other story.
I mean, I will say I get the editing Oscar. I get why Oppenheimer won for editing, especially just the way the whole Nolan timeline thing. That's hard to edit, hard to piece together. So, and that did well. Last thing I'll say, next week in Star Wars. This is kind of prepping. This is just my plug. Toronto Comic Con 2024 is a mere 5 days away. 5 days away, I guess. Yeah. Starts Friday, goes till Sunday. I'm not quite sure how much Dom. I think Dom mentioned his panels. The panels I know for sure. I will be with Ash, who was on this podcast a few weeks ago. That we will be doing an intro to High Republic 101. That is at 4:15, I believe. Yes, 4:15 on Saturday, 4:15 Eastern on in this both in Theater 4, Theater 202 CD. So that'll be on Saturday, 4:15, and then we'll have dinner for an hour, and then we'll turn around Taylor Swift Eras Tour. So that's what I'm going to be doing Thursday. Feel free to come and watch the flagship podcast the Star Wars Underworld podcast with Thursday at 9 o'clock. I will be watching. I'll be over there watching the Euros film on Disney Plus at 9 o'clock. Just to prep for this panel, right? Right? No,
Right.
because I also want to. But also, I'll be on the Friday morning at 11, the one that Dom mentioned. Intro to Star Wars Publishing, with Dom, with Ash, and with none other than Claudia Gray. That's going to be something else. You know, and I trust Dom to figure out how to have a panel and an interview and all that at the same time. That'll be interesting. But yeah, then Dom is going to get a different cast of characters for celebrating Star Wars on Sunday at 3, I believe. So, or maybe it might be a bit later. So yeah, it's going to be full. It's going to be. This is the first time I've could say I've had any of my own panels. I subbed in for Dom for Din's panel a few years ago, but I have 2 of my own, and I'm on a third that I'm really interested in. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be a different experience. Dom and I, we are looking at having kind of daily recaps and different things. Kind of just getting the feel of the con, the vibe of the con. It's in the North Building. If you know the Toronto Convention Center, you'll know that is the incorrect choice. That's the one thing I'm going to keep being salty about. It's going to be packed like sardines. It's going to be hot. It's going to be uncomfortable. The South Building is the proper way to go for that. Much bigger, much more comfortable, much more seating. Doesn't have the big theater. Doesn't have the big panel room, but they can figure something out. Come on. So, I mean, maybe that's why they did it, because to get the I mean, there's Iman Asfandi and Danelli and Osanto and the Strange New Worlds folks. And so, yeah, I mean, I get that they need to pack out the big kind of Hall H type room, but they can figure something out. Come on. They can figure something out. Just say everything except for those rooms too. I don't know. Anyways, I'm excited. It's all the shade I'm going to give them for that until afterwards. But other than that, yeah, to say I'm grateful for the panels, grateful for the press pass. Gonna be a fun weekend. Gonna be an interesting weekend. So yeah, if you are at Toronto Comic Con, listeners, watchers, come say hi. Come check us out. Come check me out. I don't bite. I'll say hi. I'm happy to meet the people. And I'll be at the after party on Saturday night too, at the Rec Room. So check that out. And then we're gonna try and figure out some sort of recording for these things. I can't promise anything, but we'll figure something out. So if we do have that, we'll be sure to let people know what the plan is for all that. So yeah,
nice.
Definitely Star Wars Underworld Network at Toronto Comic Con 2024. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a party. All right, moving right along. There was that animated show. Join the podcast area very briefly. Episode 3, season 3, episode 5, The Return, back to Barton 4 a year later. So what I said on the tractor beam, the fascinating thing is Hunter and Crosshair. They're forced not just to talk about Crosshair's breach of trust, but also they're thrust into a position where they have to trust each other, where Hunter has to trust Crosshair in this situation with the worm, WYRM, which was of course perfectly timed because ice must flow. See what I did there. Hear what I did there. What did you think of The Return?
Yeah. So I mean, we weren't here for last week too. We had to skip Bad Batch. So yeah, these are, if episode 3 was sort of our bread and butter in terms of canon, connections, all that fun stuff. 4 and 5 are very much why the show is good, even if they didn't have any of that stuff, because it's called good old fashioned character building. It's seeing the arcs continue, seeing Crosshair, kind of finally coming around to not being such a grumpy boy anymore, and actually kind of getting back into it, him in his old armor again from season 1. It's oh yeah, he's coming back. Omega being the peacemaker. Also, dang, we have a lot of people watching on our Twitter today. What's wrong with that?
Hi, robotic overlords. How you doing?
Probably
when you take us over, please Please
Yeah.
be merciful. Anyway, sorry.
And like this video, bots. Do it for the algorithm.
Yeah, no, sorry, go ahead.
Um,
Annoying.
and just kind of, but also we're getting the seeds of the future. I think Mount Tantus is
Mhm.
the we gotta free our brother clones and
Yeah,
sister clones and non-binary sibling clones
yeah.
and all the clones there. It's like we're getting the seeds of, like, yeah, we gotta go back, and this time we gotta go back with a vengeance.
Mhm.
So it's all building up, and I think these episodes just continue to show again. So we say about Bad Batch, it's a show that kind of proves my mentality of a lot of Star Wars stuff. Like, not really the concept that matters, although you can still be excited about the concept. It's the creative team and execution
Yeah.
behind it that matters. So yeah, fun episodes. Can't wait for the next two episodes
Yeah.
tonight. Right, not tonight. Next
Well,
next
tomorrow.
week.
This
Tomorrow
coming week.
night.
2
So
days.
yeah,
What day is it? What's linear time? We're
I
talking
don't
about a thing
know.
in 2054. What does it matter?
It's two episodes that I know. So
Yes.
yay, excitement.
So here's the interesting thing. So the 2 episodes are called Infiltration and Extraction. So
Who are we freeing?
where are they going?
That too.
What tantalizing mountain are they going to? Sorry. No, but again, I mean, even then, like the thing I say a lot, if you can predict something, how they do it, how are they going to do it? I
Yeah.
mean, shoot, Denis Villeneuve giving us a film about a book that's what, 60, 70 years old.
And apparently in the book spoiled everything. It tells you who's gonna live, who's gonna die.
I know, right?
In the first page.
The novel, dude, really?
Yeah, it's like the novel in the book literally says this person will live, this person will die. It gives you everything.
I have it over there. I should go check it.
Yeah, apparently.
By that I mean over my room. Anyway, yeah, no, that's interesting. Anyway, so the point being, yeah, I mean, take us along for a ride, give us a good story. What does it mean? What does it mean for them to infiltrate and extract? And what is the cost of that? It'll be good. This season has not missed a moment. 10 out of 10 across the board. I mean,
that's very consistent, I think.
It's just, I mean, and it's like, well, do I want to say 10 out of 10? I mean, it's hard to rate. Like, it's just, I don't even think about rating it. I don't even think about it. I'm watching a good Star Wars. Not a good Star Wars here. Speaking of good Star Wars, we got some Howard Look news. There we go. Yeah, so just bring that up. This just dropped on Thursday. This is StarWars.com. And hey, I also saw it on the author's own Twitter. Announced last week that Phase 3's audio drama, we finally got it. We finally got the title. Finally got the author, etc. The Tempest Breaker by Kevin Scott, releasing December 3rd of this year. It's the best I could do with the title, with the cover. It's a square, which doesn't quite work very well on StreamYard, but that's okay. Yeah, this is this glorious cover with Lorna, Avar, and of course my girl Kiev. Lorna with a very smirky, mischievous look, as she always is. And so the article goes into it saying, Lorna D, a Twi'lek descendant of Ryloth nobility. That we learn about this, of course, in Kevin Scott's Tempest Runner audio play. Left her family behind to join the Nile, rising to the rank of Tempest Runner and becoming one of Nile leader Markion Rose. He's over there. Top lieutenants. Violent and unpredictable, D has been a thorn in the side of the Jedi, even attempting to assassinate the Chancellor. But recently, D and the Jedi have come to something of an understanding, even as Lorna's relationship with Ro has soured. Now, what's fascinating about this is they timed the announcement perfectly, because it came out the day after, as I mentioned, Kevin Scott's comic, Higher Hobook #4 comic, and that has this interesting, curious moment. Lorna, so there's kind of this fight, sort of. I mean, Lorna is being kind of captured by the Jedi, and we'll get into that in a minute, but being dragged along by the Jedi into this they're behind the storm wall in the occlusion zone, and and Tarek and Sarah they're struggling, and Lorna makes this comment, oh, maybe the Jedi aren't what they are chalked up to be, maybe to Keeve. Lorna's saying that. At the same time, uh, where's Lorna's character going? On the tractor beam. I speculated. I got the sense that Lorna was on this sort of upward reforming trajectory, and then come and read this article, and Kevin Scott himself says in the article, those who have been following the Marvel Star Wars, the High Republic comic will have seen Lorna D throwing her lot in with the Jedi, especially the recently elevated Jedi Master Keeve Trennis. At first, the Alliance was forced upon her, the Jedi strong-arming Lorna into being their guide as they plunged into the Nihil Occlusion Zone. So that's the setup for what's happened in the first 4 issues of this comic. But over time, we've seen a growing and grudging respect forming between Lorna and her Jedi captors. No, that's not right. Another jailers. He's Kevin Scott being Kevin. Piece by piece, they're slowly becoming a team. The question is, how long will Lorna allow that alliance to last? Till she escapes, or until she gets what she really wants, a chance to face her former associate Markian Rowe. That's probably what she really wants. But the audio drama is that story, is that internal question of, what is Lorna? What are Lorna's motivations, and how are they changing? How are they evolving? And so, what this definitely seems to be is really a finale to the comic, at least Lorna's dimension of it. So the Wikipedia shows there'll be at least 13 issues. And so this is number 7. We know comes out in May. So let's count them up. So number 7. So June, July, August, September, October, November. That's 13. And then December will be the audio comic. So that seems about right. It seems about right to me. It really feels like it'll be that finale, the resolution to everything that's being built up. And so it was great. Again, great timing on this announcement. The last thing I'll say here, the ultimate story questions. I'm wondering, whenever we see a Keeve Trennis story, the thing I'm always asking is, the departure. What, in this case, what does Lorna have to do with Keeve's departure from the Order? I talked about on Wednesday, I talked about Lorna's reforming trajectory, but she's also in that moment to say, is that part of Keeve's departure trajectory? Whatever that
What
departure
if you never
means.
see her departure in the High Republic?
So here's the thing: we have to see it, but when? And that's the thing is, it's got to be in a Keeve story, right? It can't be in a Lorna story. It can't be in Emperor Striker, right?
I mean, you don't know. You never know
right?
with these things.
Right?
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. I hope not, just because I want Keith to get her due. But you know what, Kevin? You know what you're doing. It would be poetic for the for her departure to be kind of it would really mirror Dooku Jedi Lost in some poetic ways, just because that's the story where by Kevin Scott where she's first mentioned, and it's a story by definition of the 20th master who falls from the Order, departs from the Order. Obviously, I really hope it's for different reasons in this case, but yeah, really intriguing. This was just really exciting news. We were all like, what's the audio play? What's happening? And to see it's going to be focusing on this story that Kevin's built up in both phase 1 and phase 3 of these comics. I don't know if there's going to be anything from phase 2 here, but yeah, phase 1, phase 3. I've definitely loved the High Republic audio plays so far. I've definitely loved Dooku Jedi Lost. The Afro one was fine. I don't remember it as fondly, but I'm sure maybe if I re-listen to it, it would be better. But yeah, definitely enjoyed all these. So yeah, I've talked a lot about this one. What are you thinking? What are you feeling about The Tempest Breaker by Kevin Scott?
I don't know, because I never listened to the first one, so it's like some of these characters I have no idea. I'm just on
Sure.
Defy the Storm.
Okay.
And I'm still confused by some of the characters because I'm not quite sure about all of them. Except for Nestor. It's a Nestor story though, so it's got 2 characters I know already.
So are you able to follow the comics at all, or?
No, I haven't followed the comics. So
you just watch Tractor Beam anyway. Why not?
That's true. That's true too. Or
Yeah.
I could follow at least the broad strokes of the book.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be interesting. It might be an interesting kind of companion. I suspect he's written it so that if the only thing you've listened to is Tempest Runner, you might be able to get into Tempest Breaker. That's a possibility. So, I mean, I definitely recommend reading at least the Phase 3 comic before going into this. But yeah, everything with Lorna and Keeve has been. I mean, that the Tempest Runner. That's another thing I'll say is, the just Lorna's character in that is so rich and so well built up, and I want to find the voice actor for her because it's really a great job. Uh, Jessica Almasy was in Tempest Runner, and I could just hear her voice, Lorna D. Of course, she's Twi'lek, and so kind of has that French accent, but also it's kind of a little different, So, yeah, so that comes again December 3rd. I'm here for it. I'm excited. Yeah, it's going to be again definitely Lorna's character. I trust Cavan to handle. I mean, I trust Cavan's storytelling generally. He has this question figured out. He knows precisely when and how we're going to see Keeve to leave the Order. Again, it needs to be in a Keeve story. It can't be in anything else. I think so. Just give her due. I would find it. It's kind of, and I hate to belabor this even more. A little bit like the Canon Bad Batch thing, and again, this is a moot point. Those comics are still there. Kanan's, survival of Order 66 and going underground and taking on the name Canon, or still being Caleb, or whatever. But that's in a comic. We have that, but it only my issue with the screen versions only serves the Bad Batch. Keeve's departure from the Order can't simply be to serve Lorna. It has to be about Keeve herself.
I don't think, but I think it's okay that it serves the Bad Batch because it's not Kanan's story.
The Bad Batch isn't Kanan's story, no.
Yeah,
and that's why it's good that we have both.
I mean, to be fair though, I do wonder though. What if we don't get it? You could be projecting something that might not happen at all.
That'll be interesting. We would all be.
You never know.
We all be on a plane to Bristol, UK. Like, Cavan, what are you doing?
I mean, I kind of figure that if it's going to happen in the Charles Soule novel because that's the last thing.
That is possible too. That would have to be. I mean, that would be a lot of. I mean, again, I know Cavan trusts Charles with his storytelling ability, but no, I think that's Cavan's. Lorna and Keeve are Cavan Scott characters, the way Ahsoka is a Dave Filoni character. It's yes. That is completely the way.
I think the authors though are different though when it comes.
They are more willing to do that. They're not going to clamp down the same way. But what I mean is the best person to tell this, the best person who's thought all the way through all this and internalized all of this.
If they've done that though, because again, I don't.
Scott's done that though. Like, that's the thing. So this is the story.
And I guess that's the difference between you and me. I don't have that much faith in the authors, though. I don't think they have it all planned out.
So, because here's the story of this is the story of the High Republic is, what the spark that really brought everything together. The Luminous authors, they were they were at Skywalker Ranch, and Kevin mentioned this, I think, in his Cav letter once. He wrote this, and he was with the other Luminous authors, and he was getting imposter syndrome, of all people, right? Incredibly talented writer, incredibly talented storyteller, getting imposter syndrome, and he wasn't feeling it. He was, I don't have anything to offer. He goes for a walk. He goes for the idyllic Skywalker Ranch. Goes for a walk, and he starts thinking about. And this is before Duke of Jedi Lost comes out. Starts thinking about the characters. Starts thinking about the motivation. Starts thinking about the importance of what the High Republic could be, and he hits upon two things at once. He hits upon this character Keeve Trennis, who, and I don't quite know the sequence, but he hits upon Keeve Trennis, who is this young knight who is thrust into becoming a master. Takes on this leadership mantle, the strong leadership character, but for some reason, and we don't know, but he does, leaves the order, departs from the order. He sneaks that reference into Dooku Jedi Lost, this Master Trennis who left the order. At the same time, on that same walk, at the same way into thinking about Kiev, and I hope I'm getting this right, he hits on, okay, why would she leave the order? What is challenging the Jedi at this time? Where's the dramatic thrust? Say Gene Roddenberry wouldn't go for. What's the dramatic impulse here? The conflict, the tension, and he hits upon this question: what do the Jedi fear? And that is why Keith Trennis is the most important character in the whole dang High Republic, because her departure from the Order, it's the most drastic response to that question, and probably the refusal of that question. What do
I
the
mean,
Jedi
again,
fear?
though, you can't assume that they're gonna show that though,
We don't know if they're going to in a book, but
or at all.
that would be such a massive letdown. That would be like, honestly, Joel, that's like saying everything that all the promotional materials have been building up to, and that's the series finale. You know what it would be like? It would be like Star Trek Enterprise. Honestly,
Well,
it would actually be like everything is building up to.
sorry, my cat is playing with a thing. If you hear sound,
that's good. Cat's allowed to be right. Honestly, Joel, it would be. I know you're trying to play devil's advocate here. I'm just telling you, if they don't do that, I think I would find it unsatisfying. But it would be like Star Trek Enterprise, where everything's built up to the formation of the Federation, and then they kind of show it off screen. We don't even show it, and we all lampoon that finale for being so terrible, right? So if you're considering Michael Siglain, Kevin Scott, if you're considering not showing Keith leaving the Order as one of the big final events of High Republic, of the High Republic initiative, take the cautionary tale of Star Trek Enterprise season 4.
Secretly, Kevin Scott loves Star Trek Enterprise. Says it's the greatest Star Trek of all time. I don't know.
He might. I
know.
Good stuff in there.
Well,
the
how
finale
many?
of season 4 is terrible.
I mean, who knows? Maybe he secretly loves it. I mean, but how many things is he writing, Kevin Scott? This
He's writing the comic, and I think this might be it. I don't know. Phase 3. Oh, forgot to write High Republic.
See, that makes me question though, because like if you say this is such a big event, wouldn't you want this big event to be in a thing that has the most eyes on it? And I'm like, well,
sure. Well, that would be Trials of the Jedi. So it could be in the Charles Soule novel. You're right.
That seems kind of important.
Yeah, I could see that. I will give you that.
Which again, like the inclusion zone thing, which wasn't in the comic, which still baffles me, because that's kind of important and kind of the entire thing of phase.
Well, that was in Eye of Darkness in the novel, right?
Oh, that's true. I mean, I guess they set it up in Eye of Darkness.
So I mean, again, for that reason, because it's such an if I'm saying it's such an important thing, and you want to put it where people's eyes are on it, I can see. I'll say this. I mean, we know the thing about High Republic, it's been the most collaborative storytelling, probably more collaborative than some things in the live action. Definitely the most collaborative book publishing thing.
I mean, live action doesn't even try to be collaborative.
It's true. It's all other thing. But so we know if Charles is writing this story,
right,
or as part of Trials of the Jedi, there have been some deep, intense conversations with Cavan about what Keeve cares about and what Keeve wants, and what why she would do this.
I mean, not to. I think my vibe, and again, this is just my speculation, is if a Trial of the Jedi is anything like Live of the Jedi, Jedi.
Well, yeah, that's important. That's the names of the phases too.
That's true. Then I get the feeling that it will be kind of this quasi anthology, but with a overarching story that kind of like, okay, like how Live of the Jedi kind of like set up everything, and then split it off. Trial of the Jedi can kind of like, okay, here's kind of like every chapter is like a snippet of like, and then this character did this, and then this character died. This
Yeah.
character left the Jedi Order. I'm sure it'll be more epic than the way I make it sound. But it's kind of like it's like a certain point of view, but epilogue ending of the High Republic. Unless there's secretly a thing that we don't know about that's like a true epilogue.
Yeah, well, living force, but that's another story. Yeah, no, okay. Again, I can see what you're saying. It's, I mean, that it could I be putting too much on it? It could be, looking at this image right now. Light of the Jedi. That was ultimately Avar's story. She's the hero of Hetzel. She is the light of the Jedi until the fall of Starlight. Kiev faces the trials of the Jedi. She faces the nameless. And then she comes to question. And so maybe Kiev is to Trials of the Jedi what Avar was to Light of the Jedi.
I'm just trying to think of places where this could happen.
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah, it's a good thing.
Especially if it's such a big thing. It's like, well, I wouldn't want I would want it to be in something that I know everyone's gonna get. Not everyone's gonna get weekly comics because those are hard to get and expensive. And you don't want this in this audio book because it's not really Keith's story.
That's
guess.
I mean, that's really what I'm saying here.
So it's sort of like, where is this gonna happen? Unless Kiev is like really old and Acolyte's got like a flashback or she's 100.
I don't want to be in a flashback either. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, my dream would be in an epilogue novel, adult novel. But again, that hasn't been announced. We know.
Yet.
I mean, Trials of the Jedi is supposed to be the grand finale. So we'll see. We will see. All right. I mean, we talked plenty about that. I'm sure there's more to talk about for that, but for now, let's move right along. I'm going to do some more talking though. I'm going to get that out of the way. I know normally we throw it to Joel for the main topic, but I have a few things I want to kind of set up here. Take a breather. Fun times.
We're going back to the future.
Going back to the future. Star Wars in 2054. So before we dive in, I just want to do a bit of a caveat. We talked about Gene Roddenberry off the top. We talked about George Lucas off the top. Just like the sci-fi fantasy genre as a whole, the task of futurism, like even this scientific sort of historical study, if you will, of futurism, and trying to project into the future realistically, which what Gene Roddenberry was sort of trying to do in a way, oddly enough. I mean, that's the irony, just as an aside. That's the irony, right? Gene Roddenberry tried to project our real world into the future and ended up having more of a fantasy. And George Lucas tried to had a fantasy and ended up being very, very compelling and meaningful to our real world. They're both contemporary. And they're both compelling and meaningful to our real world. I love Star Trek. I'm looking forward. You all know that. Everyone knows how much I love Star Trek. But anyway, futurism. So the task of futurism that we're kind of doing tonight. It's about what we think will happen and think will be about, but it's what we think will happen. It's an expression of present day concerns. It's what we think right now in the moment, because the things we care about and the things we're worried about, we're the thing, part of the thing we care about is, will this continue? Will take the Oscar winning Best Picture last night. If we build an atom bomb, will that continue into saying, okay, we build a hydro bomb, and will we eradicate the species? That's the problem that the film grapples with. Fair enough. Will this continue? What positive and the question also, what positive or detrimental effect is this thing having right now? And that can it transform or corrode if it does continue? And so, and Joel, just a bit of an audible on the notes. We're going to switch one thing around. I'm going to dive in to say, in our real world, what are some things, and then we can look back on Star Wars and look forward on Star Wars. But the kinds of things that are happening now that and these are just examples, the kinds of things that are happening now that affect the way we tell stories, affect the way we consume stories, the type of stories we need and we're calling for. Um, and so, just this is just not an exhaustive list. It's just literally last night things I was just brainstorming what's happening now in 2024 that I think might be relevant. I'm sure you all have different lists. If you do, comment box is right there. Let us know. See what I did there. Let us know
Yeah.
what's really relevant, important that you think might also be relevant and important in 2054. The first thing I brought up was the Apple Vision Pro. Finally, and it's still pricey, but finally there's a viable consumer level VR experience where you can watch 3D movies just like this. And it actually, from what I can see, when the price goes down, when the technology goes up, very soon in the next probably 5 years, it's going to be incredibly viable product. And so increased interactivity generally. I mean, shoot, we got this thing, normalization of this pocket computer, you know.
True,
Um,
true.
we just call it a phone. It's way more than a phone. I could call people, but most often I text or interact or I write stuff. I wrote these notes on my phone last night. I
So you
kid
have
you
better
not.
thumb than I can. I can't do that
I kid
without
you not.
lots of spelling mistakes.
That's fair. I kid you not. Maybe another similar technology thing. By 2024, uh, and this is partly after COVID. The normalization of streaming shows, specifically as a way to watch shows. At the same time, there's a renewed desire to go to the movie theater. I think a similar thing is the way that the old TV versus movies were higher than TV. That's completely out the window. Nobody cares about that anymore. In terms of just prestige and in storytelling craft,
Oh yeah.
even budgets to some extent. Nobody thinks that way anymore. So, but there's still desire to go to movie theater. Parallel to this, the dominance of, and this is thanks to the internet, especially the dominance of on-demand online streaming over this very rapidly disappearing linear TV.
Although
Uh,
streaming is just now becoming cable again, to be fair, with some of the
yeah, in some,
price
especially for sports. I mean, that's the one thing is,
bundles and
yeah, yeah, it's
commercials and
true in terms how we buy things and how they market them. Sports is the only thing I really, and even then, it's for me, it's you know, it's actually a streaming service that shows the live soccer game, and one of them, it's Apple. So Apple TV, watch MLS on Apple TV, right? We do it. A similar thing again. This normalization of instant connectivity. This is already true in 2022. In January 2022, a guy in Toronto and a guy in Orange County have a live YouTube show, and it's no problem. I mean, yeah, I think the first one we had a bit of technical difficulties when we have some technical hiccups along the way, but it's really not, not a problem
Mhm.
in that way. Joel, you do have a note there if you want to jump into that one.
Oh yeah, I mean it's interesting, right? And
Mhm.
there's a bit of a paradox to
Yeah.
I think this in a lot of ways where and I've talked to other people about this, so my other online friends. And this
Yeah.
is nothing against my online friends, by the way. I want to make this very clear. I love all
Yes.
of my online friends.
Mhm.
I have a very close relationship with a lot of my online friends.
Mhm.
But there's this weird paradox where, on the one hand, I have a lot of great online friends, and I love you all. But
Mhm.
at the same time, I also feel like weirdly very socially isolated the
Yeah.
minute I turn off the Discord or the streaming. It's this weird. We are very interconnected, and yet I also
Mhm.
feel we're also very isolated at the same time.
Yeah.
It is the weird paradox of this whole thing. Um, Although, for people like me, it's especially hard because, like, disabled,
Yeah.
can't really. I mean, I've always had trouble making friends in real life anyway. Um, so but it's like extra, stuck in the house with, especially when the wheelchair's not 100% working. And also just there's not a lot of social stuff going on in my
Mhm.
city. My city's kind of boring, but
Yeah.
it's this weird thing of like we are very interconnected. You and I can do this podcast and have a great time. And then the minute I turn it off, it's like, oh, I'm by
Yeah.
myself again. I feel sad.
Yeah.
Uh,
So we're talking about things we talk about in therapy. I'll get
yes.
to mine in a minute. A little bit. I mean, I do wonder, there's a few things there. Just our cities generally are isolated and isolating. I was in rural Alberta, and yeah, there are issues in rural Alberta, but everyone knows your name there, and everyone kind of knows what you're around. And the way, literally, for my job, working in the church there, a good chunk of it was sitting at the coffee shop with the retirees, and then going to kind of the social group, going to the Legion or whatever. So cities generally, I think.
I live more in suburbia, but
Yeah, well, the Legion. I mean, well, so where I was, it was a town of 6,000. But yeah, well, suburbia. I mean, suburbia is very much part of the urban isolation, just the little box thing. I mean, Joel, I wonder if you're getting at is this is a problem that needs to be addressed. Yeah, we have all this technology, but social accessibility and the power of accessibility, the power of technology to ensure that people with accessibility needs are better socialized. We just
that's true.
haven't done that. We just haven't thought of doing that. We're slowly doing that. I mean, one of the things for my day job is I'm working on an accessibility plan for my work, and just a lot of things we have to consider as a small TV station, and so, and that's partly the government, Canadian government says you got to do this, you got to think about this, and we want to, but I mean, it's literally getting into a restaurant for you, it's literally getting
I can do
getting down.
that, thankfully.
Sure, fair enough. I mean, getting down to San Diego for Comic-Con.
Oh yeah, that's gonna. I mean, I got to get rid of a van.
The whole,
I mean, thankfully, the streets are nice and my chair's fixed.
yeah.
Like, I'll probably, but it's more like just I
Mhm.
go to a cafe and no one wants to talk to each other. They're all on their phones.
Yeah, that's
It's
true.
like it's like you don't meet people. I can't meet a potential future partner. It's just like everyone's
I'm
busy
getting
doing
to
their
that in
thing.
a minute too.
Everyone's doing their thing.
Yeah. Before I do get into that, one thing I'll say, and another thought, as part of my list here, um, geopolitical fragmentation on a global scale, right? The globalization. I think it was John Stewart a few weeks ago talking about how, uh, you know, in the for a good chunk after World War II, it was America versus the Soviet Union. Then the focus really got insular to liberals versus conservatives in the U.S. Now there's the globalization of the American culture war. That's what he was saying. You have Trump and Putin, saying these evil liberal Westerners, kind of globalizing that culture war. That Putin's taking that up, and then all the, so with Ukraine, and then all the furor. I mean, Gaza has become this proxy for North American culture war too. I mean, it always has been. That has been for decades, but right now it's particularly acute because there is a much more vocal left, I think, in North American society, and so is that. But to say that the need for stories, say, that have wars in the title, to express the implications of this, the horrific implications of this, this globalization of culture war, is that what are going to be the implications of that 30 years down the line. We're 30 years out from the fall of the Berlin Wall, right? It's crazy to think, but 30 years from now, what are the implications of Ukraine and Gaza? So you had another thought there.
Oh, right. I mean, we don't have time to go into all my complicated feelings about that. I'll just say, um, uh, Rome will die. Long live Rome. Disney's the Catholic Church. When the American state eventually collapses, Disney will be the Catholic Church, and our culture will live on. So that's my prediction right there.
That's a
Is
good one.
of yeah, the state will die, long live Rome. There you go.
Yeah,
That's my 5 minute thing. I could go into way more
yeah,
complicated feelings about Ukraine and Gaza and
yeah,
all that, but we don't have time, and we don't want
yeah.
to get Star Wars Underworld in trouble. So
So interestingly, really great novel, sci-fi, Catholic sci-fi novel called Candle for Leibowitz by Walter Miller. Uh, Definitely recommend that, about the endurance of culture and faith uh, past past nuclear destruction. Really, really fascinating. Speaking of that, another thing, the American society continues still to be polarized, religiously polarized. Um, there's, evangelical support for Trump is as strong as it's ever been, but there's also a reckoning with it, or also reckoning for it. Um, you we see just last week. I know this is a trigger warning for sexual assault on university campuses. Um, Jerry Falwell's Liberty University uh, sued 14 million. Was it 14 million? 14 billion by the Department of Education for their failure to actually adequately respond to sexual assault on Liberty
good for them.
University campus. And this is Jerry Falwell Jr., right? Um, so yeah, there's a reckoning there. Incidentally, and I mentioned this last week. See, 2054. Well, 2040. I don't know where my church is going to be. Nobody knows. Nobody cares. Is the problem. Um, so there was a study that said that 2040, the last Episcopalian would die in 2040. That's not actually going to happen. It just means that liberal mainline Christianity, that we know it. Well, first of all, it'll have completely lost its relevance to society. Completely, just the whole thing of we were the state, we were society, completely gone. And it'll have transformed into something new and hopefully unrecognizable, actually. And spoiler alert, just like with you saying with American culture, we'll be okay. Uh, that I know is we still have something to say to the world. Um, you know, mainline, the liberal mainline will be fine, even if we don't aren't the liberal mainline. On a related note, actually, I don't know you have a bit more to say there, but I think this might be somewhat related. Is um, continued normalization. It's 2024, and that's the thing we keep saying. It's 2024, right? Uh, Mainstreamization, corporatization is another concern, but also just the regularization of LGBTQ identities in society, especially among Gen Z. Um, podcast last week, is a great
Carla.
example.
Yeah.
You know,
I
daughters
don't know
of
if they're
Christ.
Gen Z though. I think they might be our age.
Well, maybe, yeah, I don't know. Well, sure, but especially among Gen Z, they're the first generation where it's just not really a thing. I'm sure there's lots of problems too, but yeah, it's those kinds of things are just not, and I mean, the next one of the next things coming up is to say, why are these major banks supporting the Pride Parade? Why are cops at Pride Parade? That's always a debate I see. Um, the kind of the cost of being mainstream. But some people are thank God we're finally mainstream. I hear that point too. I think the next step, and this is in a number of things. I mean, polycules, poly relationships. What are
Men
we
on
know
men
what?
relationships.
Pardon?
More mainstream shows that have more
Yeah,
male on male relationships.
yeah. I mean, yeah, that's true too, right? Like more gay men, because yeah, that's true. That we're somehow more comfortable with lesbians, men, and that's a problem. But that's hopefully changing. But
Hopefully.
also, yeah, what is? I mean, here's the question. What is my church going to say about polyamory? What if we're going to say anything, we know what evangelicals are going to say. We know what Catholics are going to say. Um, what is society generally going to say? You know, and it's starting to say, is that the line, or is there no line? Is it going to keep going? And I know that's a tricky thing for me to say, but I'll admit it's just a live question I have. I don't know. Please don't cancel me. One
Smarter
thing,
people than us can probably talk about
yeah, that's a better way of putting it. There are people who have more direct contact with folks. That's fair. Uh, a continued, and I'm bringing all this up, especially, I mean, High Republic has gone the diversity route massively, and so Star Wars is going to keep going this route massively. I continue reckoning with Me Too. The continuing, I mean, a normalization of especially women who want to be single, not because they're arrow ace, but because they just don't care anymore. um,
or
don't,
economically.
or for, I mean, that's a huge reason, right? Economic reasons. Don't need men to support them.
It's expensive to have kids.
And yeah, I mean, childlessness, that's a huge one too, especially in the West. I mean, these are things in the West, but also, I mean, how is that going to be exported? There's a question. All that. The one thing, I literally brought up in therapy on Sunday, the breakdown in hetero relationships, the breakdown in, or the difficulty, just because the world has changed for everyone. It's changed for straight men in a way, and this is what I'm going to actually bring up. Taylor has a really hopeful way forward here, and just the story she tells and sings about. But yeah, what's a straight guy to do in this world, right? How are we to live? How are we to keep going, and not blame anyone? But you know, um, yeah, it's kind of, and for individualized reasons, right? Economic reasons, individual reasons. Is that a trend? Is that a direction? I don't know. Or is that me generalizing? I don't know there. But so all these, just the continued kind of tossing of the gender soup and tossing of the orientation soup. And yeah, and that's the thing, is people make institutions, human nature makes institutions make human nature, and nurture nurture. So so that you had two thoughts about Trump, and you had thoughts about um lesbian relationships. So you mentioned one of them.
Oh, well, you're talking about the evangelicals, and I'm like, well, Trump gave them the courts, so
Yeah.
evangelicals are dying out. They need to hold on to power via the courts. That's why no one likes the courts anymore, because they're all filled with crazy evangelicals who are just trying to hold on to this minoritarian part of power.
Yeah. Although here's an interesting thing. I read an article about this.
Mm-hmm.
The Republican Party never actually wanted Roe versus Wade to be overturned. Never wanted it, because now they have nothing to say. Vote for us, and we'll overturn Roe versus Wade.
Well, that's the scary thing about the Supreme Court. It's like, I don't know what it's gonna do.
True.
And it's kind of,
that's true.
I mean, like, we're getting to a point where it's like they could screw up union power, and that's not going to be good for anybody.
Yeah, keep going.
Look at the Hollywood stuff. It's like that might not be able to happen anymore. It's like, uh-oh.
Yeah. So yeah, sorry.
So there's that. And I mean, we talked about this already, but like, 2010s was very much, you saw the normalization, especially on screen, with the slow normalization of mostly lesbian relationships. And you can think outside Star Wars, you saw, was it Korsami with Avatar, She-Ra, that was a big one. Harley and Ivy got together, that was nice. That was kind of the first step. And I have some cynical reasons why I think sometimes it's lesbian relationships that go first, but I'm glad, good on it. But also, male on male, trans men, more ace, the polycule that you say, that's next to kind of start getting normalized. Like, see more, it's always, young teenage girls who are, in the lesbian relationships, and it's great. But like, don't forget young gay boys as well.
Yeah.
They got stories that need to be told, and both, live action and especially in animation. Um,
Yeah.
that's got to get normalized. Ace kids, trans kids, more of that, of
Mhm.
course. So it's hopefully, and if it's the smart studios, as cynical as they are, know that
Yeah.
that's where the money is, so they can, be weird and
Mhm.
like they're the reason why there aren't popular, rich, conservative TV or anything these days, right? Like in some ways,
Mhm.
that is the diversity liberal has we've won the wars on culture and TV. They're the reason why people like
Yeah.
Gina Carano only make $100 for their movies, and no one watches them.
I mean, I think
Uh,
Hollywood was always in that direction,
well, that too. I mean,
but
obviously, there was a
yeah,
lot of that, but there's no such thing as like popular conservative TV.
they're not showing that yeah anymore. It's all kind of
And
niche.
it's like unless you watch the 700 Club, but like they got billionaires to back them.
You
So,
know about the 700 Club, right?
oh yeah,
Who's that guy? What was that guy's name again?
I
I
don't
forget.
remember. Isn't he dead?
Yeah.
But my point is, like yeah, we saw it's certainly different than in the early
Yeah.
2000s when I was a kid, and
Yeah.
hopefully Star Wars will reflect that. And we should probably actually connect this back to Star Wars. We've been
Yeah. Well, I will say one last thing is I want to tell something that has blazed the trail. It's Star Trek. It's Discovery. No, yeah, it's Discovery. Really, I mean, the best relationship there is two men on Discovery, and then kind of their kid is non-binary in a relationship, and yeah,
That's
and they do it, and it's not again for me with shipping, right? It's not just to get people to suck face. It's an actual they actually have this dynamic with them as characters. So really, yeah, really well written, Stamets and Culber. So yeah, I mean Star Trek lagging behind. Star Wars, sorry, lagging behind on that for sure. Except for in certain one thing where it isn't again with High Republic, at least from everything I hear. Uh, and this is maybe connected, but also just back to the technology piece. Um, Physical paper books as comics, as well as comics, have shown this surprising. I'm at a loss, literally at a loss for words at how resilient it is. It's indescribable. Um, literally today I went to a store. I was today years old. Went to a store and I bought this piece of medieval technology, 1,000-year technology.
Hmm.
Look at that. Look at that.
I don't think it's that impressive. Quite. I
No,
don't know.
but well, the
think.
fact that it's given, especially given all the options, even to read this book. And I'm not knocking audiobooks or digital at all. I'm just saying there's still something primordially human about grabbing this book, turning off a screen and grabbing this book and having and turning the paper and all that, and also despite all the other options of entertaining ourselves and taking up our time, uh, we still go out and buy books, and it's not what it was. It's not the dominant industry that it was. It's not the dominant medium for communicating ideas anymore, but it's still there and there to stay. We will have paper books in 2054. That I'm convinced of. If we have them in 2024. So, again, smartphones and everything. This is stayed put. Also, honorable mention: blogging and audio only podcasts are still around after what 10, 15 years. So yeah, after
Radio.
after again after the YouTube technology, people still want different ways of connecting to stories. So there's that. Then one last thing, uh, you know, continue consolidation of media, and that's again going back to you know, what Disney being the Catholic Church, if you will, and of streaming and everything.
Pope Bob Iger, the
Hope
fifth of
Iger,
Bob. The
the
the next Bob will rise.
next Bob. Yeah, of course we got Apple and Disney and Disney and Disney and Disney and uh, all that. And without any kind of antitrust legislation doing anything, um, okay, uh, it's just all under. I mean, that's true for every industry, really. Is the oligopolization of the market of late capitalism, which it's concerning because of, as we saw with labor, and that's another weird thing where if there is a conservative element in Hollywood, it's they want the Supreme Court to take on labor. Bob Iger saying being the things he said about the strikers was so completely out of touch, but not for some people. So consolidation of media under 5 things, but you have a different way of looking at that. You have maybe a more positive way of looking at that. So I'll let you.
I don't know if it's positive. I just think it's just a factor.
Yeah,
because of that, franchises never die.
True.
That I think we, and I guess now I'll take over. I get the Mando talkie stick. Because of the fact that we now live in a dystopian oligarchical world of big media companies, big franchises never die. Star Wars will never die. Star Wars under Disney will never die unless we all die because if we all blow each other up. And even then, I don't know, because who knows? Maybe Disney will still survive the apocalypse if it's not that bad. We don't know.
Canonical Freely Boats. I'm telling you guys.
Hey, you never know. Disney, the Catholic Church. I'm calling it now. But my point is, how people are always saying, "Oh, Star Wars is gonna die." They're never gonna not make Star Wars. They've been making Star Wars straight since 2015. Sure, taking on different forms, but here's an example. When you really think about it, we've had at least one. I'm going to say at least one. I think, at least one Star Wars installment in live action. One live action Star Wars installment since 2015 straight, nonstop. It's just right. Think about that.
Yeah.
Really think of Force Awakens. I mean, I think maybe we missed a year because of COVID. I don't know.
Yeah.
Force Awakens, after Rise of Skywalker, people are like, oh, they don't make Star Wars movies anymore. But live action Star Wars, Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett. We had 3 live action Star Wars installments in a year sometimes.
Yeah.
And even when we're running out of streaming shows, we're probably going to have movies. So we're still going.
And we think Star Wars is well lagging behind Marvel. Which is completely a whole other universe, right?
Exactly.
As in a whole other scale, they've had 4 and 4 some years. So
exactly. Yeah. That's why they're putting the reins. They're like, okay, time to push back a little bit. That's why this year is gonna be a little lighter. So excited for Deadpool though. Or you look at the most extreme example of legit failure. Quite frankly, dang! Look at all those bots watching us. It's crazy. Of legit failure of the DC. DCEU is dead. Long live the DCU. Right? They're not stopping making Superman. It's just the iteration of that universe is different. But it's still Superman. Still got Batman. Not Henry Cavill. I mean, I feel sorry for him. I'm happy about it. But we're still getting the franchise is still alive. They're just gonna try again under James Gunn and see how it goes. So because of these media conglomerates that hold all the IP, and obviously, yes, we should have big questions about that and copyright laws and IP. But Star Wars isn't gonna die. Right. Okay, that everybody who said Solo and Rise of Skywalker Last Jedi are killing the franchise. It's fine. It's fine.
Killing what they thought it was.
Yeah, exactly.
Which maybe let the past die. Kill it if you have to.
I mean, we talk about video games, but that's that's just more of a problem with the video game industry, sadly. But the franchise of Star Wars is still going. We are still getting Star Wars things. We can talk at the end. Do we need all these Star Wars things? But in terms of the franchises are still okay. They are still here. They're not going away.
Star Trek
for better or worse. Depend on who you are.
We're not talking about Star Trek in this podcast. I don't know why.
Star Trek. Star Trek still. Star Trek's been owned by Paramount.
Is what it is.
It's back, but it's not like Star Trek died. Just took a couple of. It's had some hiatuses, but it's always. It's like you got the original series.
It was touch and go. It was touch and go for a little bit. I
touch and
think.
go, but Paramount
Mm,
owned it, so they could
yeah.
always make it.
Hmm.
Thankfully, and they did.
Yeah.
So it's like it peaks and valleys, peaks and
Hmm.
valleys. Godzilla was took a long break after 2005 Final Wars, and then 2014 the Legendary film happened, and then Toho was like, "Oh, Godzilla's actually popular. We should actually do something with it." And now Godzilla minus one wins an Oscar, and I'm so
Yeah.
happy.
It's true.
Godzilla, the Oscar winner.
So I mean to say that even if it goes away for a little bit, it'll come back. There's
Oh yeah,
enough institutional infrastructure. There's an institution for it to come back. Yeah.
exactly. And this is where let's look back for a
Mhm.
second, if you don't mind. We
Mhm.
talked a little about the future. Let's talk about the past. Back to the past and the future. Um,
As I
you
should this
know,
shirt.
you talk about the institutional power. The institution that owns Star Wars.
Yeah.
My institution talk this week was Lucasfilm without Disney.
Mhm.
And one of the big things, if you were a Star Wars fan from 2010 to 2012, around the time of the Clone Wars, or 2008 to 2012, is the idea of, can the institution of Lucasfilm kind of survive without
Mhm.
George? And it did kind of feel for those few, that 2008 to 2012 period of like, well, George is kind of winding down. Star Wars itself feels like it's winding down,
Yeah.
despite Clone Wars, which was fun and all, but it's like in the grand scheme of things, it kind of felt like, oh, Star Wars is kind of winding down because George himself is winding down, and Lucasfilm as an institution was very much the personification of George Lucas, the
Yeah.
man. So if he's winding down, the studio itself is winding down, and it's like Star Wars could have. I mean, I don't know what would have happened if George had not sold. Maybe it would have. Maybe I think there would have been a lot longer drought period than
Yeah. I mean
what
that's the
we
thing. I
got.
think there would have been a drought, but
Whether or not been forever, I have no idea. I mean,
yeah.
I can't predict those things. But when he sold, then Lucasfilm gets the institutional money and power of
Mhm.
Disney, and Lucasfilm as an institution under
Oh,
the
sorry.
supervision of Disney, like, has built itself up to like, yeah, we can survive without George, and we are making Star Wars stuff.
Mhm.
At first, and like whether or not it's film or TV, that yeah, that's a bit more of a mandatey thing between what Disney wants. 2022 was very much the mandate of streaming. And then when Bob Iger came back, it's like, okay, now we're seeing back the shift to film. There's a bit more
Yeah.
balance, but probably more film. But I'm sure we'll still get some streaming with Acolyte, which is probably going to be multiple seasons.
Mhm.
But Lucasfilm and the franchise of Star Wars now has the institutional build to keep making it. Again, whether
Mhm.
or not sure, the artistic yada yada, we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
So, okay, I've rambled a bit. I'll let you respond.
Well, all I'll say is, I mean, part of the longevity of these franchises,
Mhm,
on the best part of the longevity of this is there are always kids growing up
mhm,
and being inspired by these stories. And it is the playground thing. Then it's also them going to college and learning actually how to write stories and how to tell stories
mhm,
and saying, "Oh, I want to tell a Star Wars." Well, and and getting a lot of other work under their belt, and then saying, "Oh, yeah, I want to write a Star Wars because I'm inspired by it from my childhood and
mhm.
from my past and from my adulthood." To keep going and say, and that's thing. It has its own inertia now, uh, especially Star Wars. I think.
Yeah, I had this lower in the notes, but since we were talking about it, I think
Mhm.
we'll go here and then we'll go back.
Yeah.
Is Lucasfilm as an institution 30 years from now? I'll be very curious to see what it looks like. Because let's face it,
Mhm.
Kathleen Kennedy, she's not getting any younger. I mean, no,
No,
if she wants to do it when she's 99, go for it.
like
Go
from a
for it.
wheelchair, just calling the shots,
In an
iron
ethical
fist.
like art stuff, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it. If she wants to do it, great. But she's not going to be around forever. Dave's not getting any younger either. I
Mhm.
mean, he's still spry, but he ain't
Yeah.
getting any younger in 30 years. Maybe he'll be running the company. I don't know, or maybe one of his
Yeah.
producers. Pablo, Doug Chang, a lot of the people who worked, John Knoll, a lot of people who
Mhm.
worked with George. We're gonna be like now another generation removed
Yeah.
from the Lucas peoples. I mean, obviously, we're not first generation Lucasfilm because that would have been Gary Kurtz and
Sure.
Marcia Lucas, but all those people still worked with George,
But
and
we're moving on to second generation Disney Star Wars, is what you're getting at.
well, second generation, just the second, I guess so. If you want to emphasize Disney Star Wars, or just
Yeah, like kind of
second
the
generation
whole.
of people who weren't around when Lucas was in charge, so they don't
Yeah.
have the crazy stories of George weirdness.
I mean, that's why Bad Batch, for example, one of the reasons Bad Batch is so important, and maybe Resistance too, is yeah. I mean, this is Filoni, he's involved, but it's Jennifer Corbett and Brad Rao.
Hmm.
They've taken the ball and run with it. That's why succession planning is so important. That's why the whole Master Padawan system, the Jedi last in universe, the Jedi last for millennia,
Hmm.
in part because they have this whole Master Padawan youngling thing uh, to train up the next generation, always having an eye on the future. I know that's going to be in Living. It's a bit of a tangent, but in Living Force, that's gonna be a challenge to say you're so concerned with the large scale future. What about the present? But on the other end, yeah, I mean that's. I mean, shoot, I didn't even mention global warming. My word, it's just so ubiquitous to understand, have that in our minds. What the temperature of the planet's going to be like in 30 years, but also to say, that's the thing is we're finally starting to get an understanding, hopefully slowly having an impact on, what kind of world we're leaving for the next generation as well. And in terms of its, the air quality and water quality and water access. And so all that to say with Star Wars, the parallel there is, um, are they continually open to younger blood? We know in front of the camera they always are, always have been. That's always, I mean, right from day one, this kid named Mark Hamill,
Hmm.
this kid named Carrie Fisher, getting these huge roles. Fast forward, Hayden Christensen, Natalie Portman, and then Hugh McGregor is already there, uh, and of course Daisy Ridley, John Boyega. So yeah,
Oh
Oscar
yeah.
Isaac was also kind of already there, but
Well, he
yeah,
was. Yeah.
in front of the camera, who behind the camera, what's their succession planning? What's their
I'm sure
sense
they
of
have to have one. That's every
they do,
corporation does
yeah.
technically. In
And
terms of like,
that's again why the Bad Batch is so, and why it's so great. One of the great reasons why Bad Batch season 3 is so great is it's a sign that whatever Lucasfilm succession planning is, it's working really, really well. uh, because yeah, again, Filoni can hand off the reins really effectively to Corbett and Rao and say, "Tell your story, continue the story that I've told, George and I told. I'm gonna go do Ahsoka. I'm gonna go do this Thrawn film.
dude,
I'll
Mando.
do Mando. I'll be there to help and guide and
Hmm.
answer questions, but
Right.
it's your baby now." So they're gonna take that. Here's the hope: is they're gonna have that experience and say, "Oh, this is really important for the franchise. It's really important for how Hollywood." I mean, there's another reckoning, and I think that's part of the strike. One thing that came up in the strike, a reckoning with how Hollywood deals with, and I know they're in San Francisco, but you know what I mean. The industry deals with younger, newer folks who don't earn as much and don't have as much power for the apprentices, right?
Right.
Um,
I mean, we gotta thank Kathleen Kennedy because she could have easily fired Dave Filoni when she was restructuring the whole studio.
yeah.
You know, like
I mean,
she
that
could
would
have
have
been.
been very silly, but
I mean, hey, you don't. I mean, hey, you never know with these people sometimes. But she
true,
could have. It's like, okay, I'm the president now. The new regime. George is
right?
gone. Dave, you're out.
Because he was part of the old regime. That's true. Yeah,
You know,
the ancien regime.
Unshun regime, yes, the but she was like, no, Dave has value clearly
Mhm.
to the company, and she groomed him, started grooming him to be both director of live action, but also
Yeah.
getting this kind of more formalizing an executive job.
Mhm.
Whether or not, of course, I don't know if he can like being groomed to be her successor of the whole presidency. Uh,
I don't think
Probably
that's
gonna be
his wheelhouse, frankly, but
yeah, that's it. I mean, I feel like it'd probably be more like if anything, it'd be
yeah,
who's his producer? Like who's Filoni's producer who they promoted? Uh
I don't know.
One of
Um,
those people, one of those vice presidents, um,
yeah,
who is to take over the company, maybe depending on who they want to like a Carrie Beck type, might be Carrie
yeah,
Beck, so and obviously they gotta have succession plans in case God forbid Kathleen Kennedy, you know
sure, yeah,
that's why they have vice presidents and stuff for a reason.
hmm,
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, so yeah, 30 years from now, a lot of the Lucas regime people who've been there from the olden days, or at least
mhm,
the days of the prequels, more probably better equipped, aren't gonna be there. So it's like,
true.
hopefully and I do think that will make Lucasfilm look differently. And again, I get on to my next point,
Hmm.
how George Lucasy is Star Wars gonna feel, and how much should it feel, quite frankly, because we talked about this in our last episode.
We talked about this a
uh
lot, actually. We
we
keep
talk
going.
about
It's
this a
good.
lot,
It's fair.
but
Yeah, fair point.
it's like, should we do things the way George did them? Should we portray characters, races, as George portrayed them in his films? Again, great example, the Tuscans. If we did it the way George did, then the Tuscans are just monsters who go
Or the Neimoidians for the same reason, right?
or the Nemoidians with their very bad Asian accents.
Yeah.
That's gonna have to change, hopefully, if Nemoidians ever show up again.
Mhm.
I don't think we want to do the over the top accent Nemoidians as much as I enjoy it, but I know why it's wrong. um, but Mandalorian was like, no, let's show the Tuscans as
Or Book of Boba Fett.
honorable, and Book of Boba Fett. It started Mandalorian too.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe the first episode of season 2, the Tuscan episode, was
True.
show the Tuscans as an honorable people who use sign language, and they can be reasoned with,
True.
and they don't, they're not the monsters who tortured Anakin's mom, even though
Mhm.
he also killed the women and children of the tribe too.
Right.
Um, so already it's like, yeah, let's maybe get away from the ways George would have done things,
Hmm.
and then you get more of the philosophical questions of whether or not were the Jedi flawed in the prequels, and that's just something we added later, when George wasn't doing it anymore.
Hmm.
Like should we do that? I mean, probably. It's like like again, that's probably not how George would have told the story, but George isn't here now, is he?
Yeah.
So I mean, I do think kind of George Lucasy is very subjective, and kind of at the end of the day, just like, well,
Mhm.
this isn't making me how I felt when I was a kid. Well, not a kid anymore. You're in your 30s. You're
Yeah.
watching things that are made for families and general audience. You're a 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old person enjoying this. You can, but just
Yeah.
remember, you're no longer a kid, or technically even the target demographic.
And that's
Uh,
the challenge. I mean, that's why people were all up in arms about the prequels. That's why they were up. One of the reasons, at least, up in arms around about the Last Jedi.
yeah.
You know. So
So
yeah.
yeah, um Star Wars gotta evolve. I mean, hell, Star Trek evolved.
Yeah.
Gene Roddenberry goes, and it's like, okay, humans actually have to have internal conflict and can be
There's
flawed.
yes.
Um, you
And
know,
the crew can fight.
the crew can fight
So,
and be selfish sometimes and have petty arguments.
yeah.
Cisco can be petty about Picard killing his wife when he was
I
Locutus.
don't know if that's even petty. That's not petty. That's just real.
I mean, yeah, that's real. That's real. But in Gene Roddenberry's mind, Cisco be like, no, I
Yeah.
know it is logical
They
because
wouldn't even. Yeah,
they
they wouldn't even. He wouldn't even broach that.
exactly.
True.
But
Yeah.
Cisco's like, nah, I know he's emotionally angry,
Yeah.
and rightfully
That
so.
makes sense. Yeah. It's very human and a very Star Warsy type of thing for DS. I
Mhm.
mean, DS9 is the Star Wars of Star Trek. Interesting. Yeah, you make that. I make that point. I mean, that's why one of the reasons why I brought up the mainstreamization of diversity. Now
Mhm.
we have to, and I love one of my favorite things about Mike Chen's Brotherhood
Oh
are
yeah.
the Neimoidians. I mean,
Mhm.
he goes there, he does it.
Mhm.
Let's get that treatment of Neimoidian artists
Yes.
who whose art gets ripped up and taken out, I think, by the Republic or just ignored by the Republic.
I think it's
Yeah.
just regular civilians who are just bigots.
Oh yeah, okay. So just like the different, yeah, I forget the details, but yeah, like look really for better or for worse humanizing Neimoidians, if you know what I mean. You know what I mean
Yeah,
by that.
yeah.
Um,
They're not all
because
businessmen. They're not.
because
Mhm.
Mike Chen is a human Asian American.
Right.
The so there's that. We have to again with High Republic. Let's see it in live action. Let's see the acolyte and go for it. I mean, in a queer relationship, again, that's the thing. What's that
How
going
we
to look like?
portray the Jedi Order in things.
That's my next question. But before I say that, in 2054, like, is it going to be a thing that there's a lesbian polycule or whatever, or all male gay polycule, whatever, in a Star Wars? Probably not. You never know. We don't know that one. We don't know. I still don't know, but only because of my own biases and my own whatever's. I could be wrong. Let people who are more experienced with the thing talk about that, Matthew. Thing I'm experienced with, how we portray the Jedi. I mean, I always say, and what we always say is, what you believe about the Jedi is what you believe about real world religions, and especially Christianity, but also Buddhism.
Mhm.
There's an emerging thing. The way I think if I'm characterizing you correctly and I'm characterizing Dom correctly, and a lot of folks, there's more of a neutral curiosity about this other thing that's out in the world that it's not out in the world for me, but or that about my life and about what I care about and how I live. This neutral, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, how does that contribute to the well-being of society? How are you grappling with the way Christianity? How am I, as in question I need to ask myself, how am I grappling with the residential schools and the impact of the Episcopal Church on slavery that we talked about last week, and all those issues, of course, evangelicalism and Trump and Supreme Court, and how I can't distance myself from them. But to say it, yeah, I mean, I think we're probably actually gonna get truer to George Lucas's idea of what the Jedi are about. Maybe he had this neutral curiosity about him. He was a Zen Methodist, or not, but the Zen Methodist George Lucas.
I like Zen.
Yeah, frog. Yeah, I mean, there's probably again the declining relevance of Christianity in the West means that there's probably going to be two things. It's probably going to have this more neutral take, stories written in the prequel era around there. There's probably this more neutral take that they were complicated and ambiguous and never, not, sometimes you can have a story that leans into, like I said, leans into the heroism of the Jedi.
Mhm.
Sometimes leads into the way Palpatine corrupted them, because the prequels do both at the same time. Also, probably, I mean, incorporating other religions into how we understand the Jedi. I mean,
Mhm.
we don't do enough with the Taoist influence. Maybe
I
we
don't
need
think
to
we
have
do.
more. Maybe we need to have more Muslim influence on the
That'd
Jedi.
be
What about that?
that'd be nice.
Um,
Be cool.
that'd be interesting. Also, I mean, the thing Jeddah introduces, and maybe this is real. Maybe this gets to your next point. Um, we're going to be able to go back and probably want to go back
Yes,
two
and
different
forward.
time periods.
Yes.
Say, I mean, this is what Phase 2 of the High Republic did so wonderfully, is this convocation of the Force on Jeddah,
Mhm.
and how there's all these different beliefs, and some of them kind of touch the dark side a little bit, but different ways of approaching the light side too. And what does that mean? And not just the Jedi. And what does it mean?
Mhm.
I mean, this is, I mean, now, but especially in 30 years from now, it's going to be the perfect time to tell a story about Jeddah. Because the funny thing about Jeddah, yes, it's named after the Jedi are named after it. That's, Vildar Mack in the Calvin Scott comic. He goes there, and yeah, he's coming from Coruscant, where the Jedi are supreme. The Jedi are it when it comes to Force
They're in the house.
religions. They it is a Jedi Republic in a way. But Jeddah, it isn't. I don't know if it's a say outside the Republic, but it's certainly, the Jedi are not it. There's so many other. They're not majority. They're not in charge. Uh, yeah, they kind of have the majority coalition, if you can say, with the Guardians of the Wills, and I forget the Church of the Force, but and natural allies on the light side, but they're not it, and their institutional interests don't always hold sway, and so
Uh,
that'll be the kind of story that I really hope
yeah, that'd be
we see
cool.
more of in the future.
That'd be nice. So I'll add a couple things before I get to my next point.
Mhm.
Yeah, I could see that. Like play a little cynical. Although I hope it's with more nuance than
Yeah.
what I would cynically almost predict. But I could see maybe some biases when they start showing Jedi at different times. Where it's
Mm.
like, here's Rey, she's our Jedi, so her Jedi are cool. She's the Jedi. Maybe a little bit of that superhero kind of like, she's the cool Jedi. I mean, I
Like
hope.
the Ray from Rise of Skywalker, you mean?
No, I mean Rey in the New Jedi Order film.
I know, but like what
A
she
little
ends up,
bit.
yeah.
A little bit, but like just in general, it's like like this is the Jedi Order that should be in a sense, right?
I
They're
see.
not like the prequel Jedi with their big fancy robes and their temple. They're
Yeah.
they're the Jedi that kick ass, take names, kick butt, and save the day.
Yeah.
Um, although I
Like
don't know,
we
considering
think Luke was.
yeah, or
Mhm.
even what Luke kind of a little bit was in those Mando moments.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he Luke can still allowed to kick some butt,
It's true.
especially for his imperial butt. But
Mhm.
I mean, with the director, I think they're probably going to go with more nuanced approach because I really like that director. She seems
Yeah.
interesting and she seems like she knows stuff. But there's
Mhm.
that too. You're going to have different Jedi of different time frames and
Sharmino Beit
it,
Shinoy. Sharmino Beit Shinoy.
right. Shurimo Bean should know it. Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah. I mean, I don't ever think they're gonna get rid of the Jedi in Star Wars just from like a pure marketing because them lightsabers make toy money, and as long as they make toy money, we gotta have Jedi.
Mhm.
Everyone wants to be a Jedi because in some ways, we talk about how Jedi are religion and all that.
Mhm.
I don't think kids think of it like that. The Jedi think are like superheroes. They got the superpowers and they can do cool stuff. And
Mhm.
then sometimes there's like philosophical stuff. But like, most kids they think of Jedi as like superpowers and cool stuff.
Mhm.
Um, so there's that. Um, but I do wonder, to talk about the George Lucasy of it all. I do wonder if there will become a time when they would go too far. Again, that
Mhm.
depends. But like, I don't want them to ever say balance is equal dark side and light side.
Right.
And the dark side is not that bad, actually. It's just equal and stuff. Instead
Mhm.
of the dark side is the malevolent evil of which we must be destroyed and
Yeah.
must get rid of evil wizard because he is bad and
Yeah.
serves Satan. Um, so it's like are we ever
Gross.
gonna get that far with like is someone gonna be like are the powers that be at Lucasfilm who kind of decide these things gonna one day say okay yeah go for it dark side we're gonna change what the dark side is.
Here's why. Here's what gives me hope. Then this is
Mhm,
related to my point before about
mhm,
a neutral curiosity.
right,
The only reason why people are like gray Jedi
mhm,
is because they believe that light means prequel Jedi.
mhm.
Prequel Jedi means church. Church is evil, or
Boring
church.
people.
And we gotta. It's this weird sort of folding over itself, saying we gotta counteract the light by being
Mhm,
in the dark. And so I don't think it's gonna happen. I think
mhm,
we're gonna lose that
mhm,
whole sense of
mhm,
uh you that Jedi equals light, like equals the antagonist, kind of this unthinking evil, and therefore dark equals some good. We need some more good. Um, there's also enough storytelling inertia. And that's another thing we're getting at here is from the last 47 years, the fact that multiple eras of Star Wars haven't gone there gives me
thank
hope
god.
that
Thank god.
yeah.
Yeah, and, don't get me wrong. I like it when we subvert some tropes, especially religious stuff.
Oh
One
yeah.
of my favorite shows right now is called Has Been Hotel, and it's like very interesting concept of the idea that what heaven and hell really
Yeah.
are. Um,
And
but I think that's a bit different from Star Wars, which says no, this is the dark side is evil. Like, and even separating
yeah.
evil and darkness, that's one thing, and we could get into that in another
Yeah.
day. But dark side in Star Wars is evil.
Mhm.
The Sith are evil people. They
See,
do.
what's interesting, Din has this interesting theory,
Mhm,
and I don't know if they're going to go for it, but that the first Sith in canon were actually they had this sort of more benevolent route. I mean, where they do go for it is the path of the open hand, right? Kind of like the path of the open hand, where they were benevolent, but because they're a minority and they had this seed of uh we're going to discount everyone else. That is what sprouts into denial. But also, what if the Sith? What if there's this seed of repression, of being repressed, and that
Well,
they?
Palpatine would make you think that.
Yeah, but what? What if there's some sort of kernel of truth in that in canon, right? I mean, because the real world version of that is, and I'm not saying secularism is evil, but there are problematic parts of it. The way it just if it denies any kind of faith commitment, but the root of that is the Reformation, where Christians were killing each other, and we had to have parliaments to standing above churches to say stop it.
I
That's
mean, that's the
part
first
of the
great
root of
schism for
democracy.
you.
Yeah,
Right.
and
Uh,
so what if in canon it is a possibility that they might go that route, and then they might want to for that's the thing for 2054 reasons. I
who
don't know. I
knows?
don't.
I don't
Maybe
know. I don't
not
know if I
because
like it per se. I don't know if I like it.
yeah, that's fair. I mean, I don't
Like, I
know
don't
if I
know.
like it either, but
I mean, it's
it's for
like
20.
Sith
I
are
don't
about
like
it.
it for 2024 reasons, right?
I
Yeah.
mean, I don't like it for any reason because at least with the passive of the open hand, there's something. There's like the Sith are about your anger and power and
Yeah.
taking what you want. Path of the open hand, or at least at the before they get all weird,
Mhm.
are it's like they're not about giving into your anger per
True.
se. Like that's the whole
They are a
part of
very selfless group.
while the Sith are like, hey, there's this power called the dark side where if I kill somebody, I get a rush of power.
That's true. There
Ooh.
is the force.
And it's like, it's like, ooh, like I can zap people with my hands, like give into all my anger, it's like zap that cursed person.
Yeah.
It's like I don't see how you you start out
Yeah.
benevolent as a Sith.
I guess
Well,
what I mean
what's the
is there a
Darth
more
Vader?
complicated story to tell? Because, I mean, thinking, is there a story? Is there at least the whole villains don't believe they're villains thing?
I mean, yes, but I also think we mature Here's my hot take:
Yeah.
complicated doesn't mean nuance. Well, nuance and complicated does not mean morally gray. There we go.
Doesn't
Right.
necessarily.
Right.
That's
You can have a complicated character
mhm.
who's still good.
Yeah.
And you can have a complicated bad guy. Like I guess Vader to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Right? It's like why'd he turn the dark side? Because he wanted to stop his wife from dying, but he still killed kids in
Mhm.
25 years of space fascism. And I guess, we're so used to characters like the Emperor being the main Sith person of Star Wars. Like in
Essentially.
and he's the epitome of no nuance. It's like he's just no, I'm evil psychopath. I
Yeah.
enjoy, here's
But
kind
he's
of a
not the most interesting character by definition, right?
no.
He's
I
not
mean,
supposed to
he's
be.
my he's. I mean, honestly, it's mostly Ian McDermott's performance that makes him fun and
Oh
entertaining.
goodness, yeah.
Right? But it compared to say like here's a kind of a character who could have been very complicated. I think Count Dooku, right?
Yeah.
He thought he was doing good because he saw the right corruption of the Republic.
Mhm.
But the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and then he kind of lost sight of the mission, and
Yep.
then became a Sith Lord, thinking hey, this dark side power, we need to impose still enlightened beings of a dark side force user because it's the only way to save the galaxy from
Yeah.
itself. But that's still a bad thing. You're
Well,
still
because
evil.
he's positing himself as the savior, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And
'Cause
that's what Plagueis thought too. Plagueis was like,
yeah.
the galaxy needs enlightened beings like us who are willing to do what is necessary and take what is
Yeah.
necessary. So, that's kind of it's like
Mhm.
in theory they think they're benevolent, but they're still doing horrible things.
I mean with Plagueis and Dooku, I mean at what point it gets self-justifying.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
and then that's when, and then obviously Palpatine's just all about murder and power. So it's like,
Yeah.
so I guess what I'm saying is you can have that kind of complicated first
Mhm.
Sith story,
Yeah.
but you have to remember, like, it's just gonna go downhill. It's like
Yeah.
the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Maybe the road to Sith hell is paved with Palpatine being the last one. And it's
The
like,
road to Malachor.
I mean,
Or the road to Exegol, I
if
guess.
Palpatine is the last Sith, which he won't be for just fine franchise reasons, yeah, you have the first Sith is maybe not a full on psychopath, and
Mhm.
maybe he was a a good person who fell and thinks through the dark side I can make the galaxy a better place.
Mhm.
That will involve a lot of murder, but what you gotta do. And then the last Sith Lord is Palpatine, who just full on power and death and then evil. And
Mhm.
so it shows like, yeah, that's the Sith for you.
Yeah.
Um, but to go on to my point for a second,
Mhm.
yeah, we'll wrap up soon. Oh yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. That's what we're gonna talk about that next. The Skywalker saga, or the Skywalker saga era, as you so nicely put it, last podcast.
How did I call it? What did I call it?
You called it the Skywalker saga era, or maybe you called it the Skywalker era. I don't remember.
Whatever. Yeah.
Point is,
You know what I mean.
from an in-universe standpoint, and I want to say in-universe, right?
Yeah.
Because this is where, like, I'll use Godzilla as an example. Yeah,
Mhm.
Godzilla's had 30, 40 movies. The original is still like the most historically significant, and nothing will take away from that. Godzilla
Mhm.
minus one probably coming close. But they're still 30 movies from an in-universe perspective. We're
Yeah.
gonna get more movies back. Hopefully, more movies forward with Ray.
Mhm.
Because I don't want just one new Jedi Order movie. I want lots of Ray adventures, and then maybe her apprentices too. And her apprentices.
Yeah.
Um, but as we move forward and backward, that Skywalker saga timeline can look really smaller and smaller as more entries come in,
Mhm.
and we're really starting to fill out things. Um, and this is where being a Legends fan
Yeah.
of back in the
That.
day
That. Yeah.
was very interesting to me, because like I was watching the Star Wars Explained timeline of Legends, which is not that long, but you think it would be. And it's funny, the Skywalker saga stuff, which did include the Clone Wars, the sixth season of the Clone Wars.
Mhm.
It just goes by fast. Like,
Yeah.
okay, the Skywalker saga happened, and then Thrawn, and then the Yuzong Wong, and Palpatine came back, and then Jason Solo, and then of course all the other big battles of the Jedi and the Sith
Yeah.
and Revan and Vitiate, and it's like the Skywalker saga almost feels like this tiny little speck of the story.
It's 60 years.
Exactly.
It's only 60 years. Yeah.
And that's new canon. I think Legends it was smaller because we got there wasn't a 789.
Yeah.
So and kind of an example of a story, although it's not a franchise that's like this. It's Lord of the Rings, where
Yeah.
yeah, we all know Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, but when you really think about it, that's actually just a tiny little speck of the Tolkien Legendarium, which
Mhm.
has like all the Second Age and all the First Age with the Silmarillions, which is like 100,000 years in the past, and like the Lord of the Rings is actually this tiny little part of the history. Oh, I
Mhm.
spit in my camera. I'm so sorry.
That's right.
Um, so from an in-universe standpoint, and I want to again in-universe because nothing will ever truly replace the historical significance of 1 through 6, especially
Yeah.
of Lucas's sixth saga. It's gonna be interesting, kind of viewing Star Wars as that Skywalker era
Mhm.
maybe looks a little smaller, as more Beyond 9 and more Before
Yeah.
1. I mean, we have Before 1 with High Republic, but even further back Before 1
Yeah.
starts to really, your timeline videos are going to look very interesting. But what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, first I'll say, High Republic, I'm convinced still has the Skywalker saga in view, right?
Oh
I
yeah,
think it is still the before. That's why it's only 200 years. One thing, so a few parallels here, in terms of the real world, our real world perception of the significance of these stories, and that's another, maybe a third question, right? Is the in-universe, the real world, and then our real world perception of it. Um, you know, it wasn't until really until kind of I guess there's a Darth Vader annual
Mhm.
in I don't know 2015, 2016. And it did a flashback. Vader goes to Geonosis. He kills he genocides the Geonosians.
Kills the queen.
He kills the queen. And there's this flashback, of course, to I killed them, to Attack of the Clones.
Right.
This is part of the prequel, the story of the prequel resurgence, the prequel victory. And this is what I'm saying is the prequel victory here is until that time, until that comic comes out, in my mind, even those are just prequels. The real meat, the real story are these three films. A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. We just don't feel or grasp the significance, the in-universe significance of those events on this in-universe character, Anakin Skywalker, until we start getting these stories, until we start getting this enough time between 2002 and 2015, 2016 to actually sit with these stories as part of canon, as part of the story in our own minds and our own sensation. And then we can go back and say, oh, shoot, that moment with the same people, that's the real birth of Darth Vader right there. Right. We can, and then, Matthew Stover really, I mean, obviously that was in 2005, but he really did a lot of help with that. And then, of course, James Lucino and all that. So
Kenobi series in terms of mainstreaming it too.
Yeah. And so my point being the mainstream sense of, okay, the story, the film story, are these 6 films together as one cohesive whole in 2 trilogies. And they're 2 very different trilogies in different ways, but one cohesive whole. And then now with the sequel trilogy, it's not just sequels, it's the aftermath, the implications,
the in-between.
Yeah, but possibly the in-between. No, but I think the aftermath implications. And well, that's the question. This is our perception of it. One thing I'm wondering is, will Lucasfilm have this brief to creatives? Say you're writing a story set 50 years after The Rise of Skywalker. Will they have this brief that says, or at least this mindset that says, are you sufficiently taking into account the events of the whole Skywalker saga? Are you writing a story set 100 years after, 200 years after? Are you telling the story in a way that shows how important the rise of the Empire, the fall of the Jedi, the fall of the Empire, the fall of the New Republic, the dispersion of political unity? Are you grasping that that's actually, are you building out the mythology, I should say, that is actually the most pivotal event to happen in the entire galaxy, in the history of the galaxy? Or maybe this is a question you're asking, or are they going to take the freedom to move away from that? And of course, the further away you get from that, the easier that is.
Right.
But, what is, are they going to, they're going to have to make a decision. Are they going to basically relativize the events of the Skywalker saga, or are they going to uphold them? I think Legends, maybe we can make the argument that Legends kind of went off the rails insofar as it started to relativize it. I could be wrong. You know Legends more than I do.
Well, you remember Legends started before even the prequels were a thing. So, as far as they were concerned, they were telling the continued adventures of Luke, Han, and Leia.
But I mean, like getting to like the 100 years after, and I mean, that's the thing. When this question doesn't really matter as much when you're getting like 20,000 years before or whatever.
Well, I mean, maybe the answer is both. Maybe they're going to do both things, right? Like a Rey New Jedi Order film, kind of have to take into account Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. And the way the High Republic really takes into account where it's going. Yeah.
Exactly. And Acolytes too. And this Dawn of the Jedi film,
Yeah.
It's the birth of the Jedi. I think that's kind of
Mm.
important to Star Wars.
Yes.
And the Mando film is, well, obviously, the Mando verse is very much taken into account.
Well, the Mandoverse is set within the
Yeah,
saga.
it's within, so that helps too.
Mhm.
I think. I mean, honestly, I think both is kind of the answer because I think in some ways
Yeah.
Legends did both, right?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
in my opinion, um, you have you take kind of two examples. You have the Darth Bane trilogy, and you have
Mhm.
Tales of the Jedi.
Yes.
Tales of the Jedi, very much the do our own thing. 5,000 years in the past, we're gonna show ancient Jedi and ancient Sith doing their thing. It's gonna be
Mhm.
a saga unto itself. Darth Bane trilogy, while obviously having nice connections to the Old Republic and Tales of the Jedi stuff, because it's building upon those foundations.
This is the gesture I'm making. It's the
Oh,
B
what?
line. It's
It's a
clear. No, no, it's as in it's clearly there's clear implications.
Yeah, the Darth Bane trilogy. Meanwhile, those books were kind of written like, but kind of twofold. One, kind of wrap up the Old Republic kind of era of
Mhm.
1,000 Jedi and 1,000 Sith duking it out, but also, hey, we gotta get down to two, and the rule of two, and the grand plan, and the
Mhm.
destruction of the Republic, and then eventually Plagueis novels like, let's go, go,
Yeah.
going into episode one. Um, so I guess
Yeah.
both is the answer, and with the post Endor stuff, it's a kind of both situation as well. Although again, you got to remember it started in the '90s, so it's like okay, we're gonna kind of show New Republic isn't building up, Luke kind of dealing with the situation. I guess you can say it gets off the rails a little
Mhm.
bit because eventually it's like, well, eventually, the Empire and Palpatine kind of don't matter. I mean, he's dead.
Yeah.
So it's like we got to do our own thing. And as for Legacy, well, Legacy is sort of interesting because Legacy is doing that meta thing that the sequels were doing. So it's kind of like looking back at the saga, but like, here's the saga again in 100 years, but kind of edgier. So
Yeah.
I guess
Okay.
the
That's
answer
interesting.
is I think Lucasfilm maybe is just going to do both. Some things will have that, hey, here's how it connects to the saga, the
Mhm.
Darth Bane movie, but also, maybe we gotta start our own saga, the saga of Old Republic of Jedi Steve, 5,000 years before the Phantom Menace and the great wars that he took upon Darth Edgelord the First. Yeah, you know
Well,
what I mean. So,
yeah, but I'm wondering then though.
mhm,
You know, I mean this film is being made
mhm.
fairly recently, fairly soon, right? Relatively, but
Right.
hopefully, yeah, you know, um, definitely before 2054. Let's hope. You know, probably before 2034.
Mhm.
What a time what a time to be alive. Uh, is there a brief now that says to as they're developing the story, you have to seed things in that will lead to, I mean, not necessarily High Republic, but at least Acolyte that will lead to the prequels.
Are we
And
talking
you,
about
and,
the Ray film, or what are we talking
no,
about
I'm
here?
talking about the Dawn of the Jedi film.
Oh, okay.
So you have to seed in something about the Jedi that will lead to or will be part of the DNA of the Jedi in the prequels, the DNA of what Yoda and Obi-Wan maybe explicitly returning to uh, on Dagobah, on Tatooine, um, what Ray picks up on, and both explicitly but also implicitly, just the identity of what the Jedi are and how that story plays out, how they get so taken in by the Republic, how Luke is able to be resurgent as the New Hope. You know, the do you have to seed those things in? Are those intentionally seeded in, or are they just me podcaster reading into it, interpreting it? Because that's what I'm interested in, what I want to see. And then so then there's that question. The similar question then, say that film or a story around then is written in 2054, are those elements as pronounced or are they less important? You know, which is to say, are stories, and this is maybe the question you're getting at
Mhm.
originally, are stories written in 2054, do they have to bear in mind whenever they're set how much, I mean, if they're set well outside, right? I mean, within
Yeah.
the 300-year thing, clearly, we're like I said, we're still dealing with the Reformation, the 1600s, right now. It's 1500s, 1600s. Will say it's set 1,000 years before, 1,000 years after. Will we care if it reflects on the implications of the Skywalker saga or not? And I think what maybe your answer is both. It might not. My own thing is like, I hope so, but not
I
necessarily. I mean, that's the thing is how will it relativize or enhance the importance of that saga?
I think it has to do both now, though. Like Rogue One, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously Rogue One has to because it's where it's set.
Well, Rogue One's
Yeah, and
exclusively and entirely that.
that's true. I mean, and Solo even to a smaller extent in
Yeah.
Kenobi, but you know, they probably want, it's like they have 25,000 years,
Yeah.
and that's up to Rise of Skywalker. They probably want to go forward as well. So they also might both because, like, well, even if we do the Dawn of the Jedi story, what if people really like the characters? Like, I want more adventures of Jedi Steve and his founding of the Order and what other adventures he's on. So in some, and it's like, or even obviously, yeah, I want lots of Rey adventures, and obviously Rey kind of have to connect to the sequel trilogy. I think they have to, but eventually. But remember, and this is something I think a lot of Rey fans, including myself, have to remind ourselves: this Rey New Jedi Order film is not called the Rey film. It's the New Jedi Order film, and then the promotion they say, "Hey, you want to see the Master? Rey. Rey is not well. I mean, I don't know how big her role is, but she is Luke in the Obi-Wan position, and there are going to be apprentices, most likely, some Padawans. And, obviously, I'm sure they're going to keep Daisy Ridley around for a while. But, what if people really like these Padawans, and they want to continue on then, and we keep going and going and going? So, again, I think you got to do both, because Star Wars needs to evolve. Like, I don't think Star Wars is the story of Anakin Skywalker anymore. And I think in a few years, it's not going to be about the story of the Skywalkers, even if we have movies that still connect and stuff like that. So, I think maybe what we as fans have to, again, this kind of goes to the question we always ask ourselves, is I think the answer to what is Star Wars always changes, because it has been. I saw the A New Hope novelization, and it said Star Wars of the Adventures of Luke Skywalker. And Star Wars was not that after 2005.
True. That is true.
And I don't think Star Wars is what it was after 2005. After he sold it.
It'll make me sad. I'll get over it.
I mean, here's the question though. Yeah, do they have
curmudgeonly old fogey? And be like, that's not my Star Wars. My Star Wars is all about the fall of the Republic and the Jedi in this perfect film, Revenge of the Sith, 2005.
I mean, it's like,
sorry,
we're kind of saying they have to mandate stuff, but like,
right?
Are they mandating anything, or is it this is just what good storytellers do?
I mean, I wonder now if they're still mandating things, but maybe by then they won't.
I don't think they were at all, to be quite honest. I just think I don't think they mandate as much as we think they do.
Some story notes, maybe a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what those?
Yeah, or I'll just be interpreting things because I want to, because that's what we do here.
Probably.
Canon podcast.
I mean,
Star Wars podcasting has been doing for 25 years. Sorry.
I mean, again, it's like, well, if again, here's the Sith versus Jedi movie that I want. Is it the last great Jedi Sith war that leads into the rule of two, or is it a Jedi Sith war that's just a Jedi Sith war and kind of a saga within itself? And I think you can do both, because I think Legends did both. So I don't know. Maybe some movies, we just have to accept some movies will be more leached to that era, and others won't. Because they, it's almost like franchises within franchises.
I mean, it's kind of like, streaming series now, right? You have the Mandoverse, and you have Ahsoka. At least those are all connected to one aspect. I mean, they're connected to Return of the Jedi and Bad Batch is also, again, we know they're finally kind of giving us these steps along the way, the road to Exegol.
Exactly.
But then the Acolyte's doing its own thing, telling its own story.
It
its own
also could be
context.
leading into episode 1, 2.
Sure, but it's also set further away from anything we've ever seen. So, yeah.
And I'll just say, even though Mandoverse is in between, I don't know. Mandoverse to me also feels like a saga within itself.
Right.
It's a saga within the saga. So we have sagas within sagas. So yeah, who knows, right? I think the answer
Russian
is
doll sagas. Leslie.
I mean, yeah.
There.
I mean,
I'm here all week. Come to Toronto Comic Con, guys.
I mean, hey, if the Silmarillion is a saga within the saga of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and the Second Age, I don't know. I think Star Wars could do the same. It's connected in that it's all in the same galaxy, and I guess sometimes historical events have to do their own thing. But I don't know if you're a fan of the Avatar series, not the Blue Cat people, the cartoon.
I still haven't watched it yet. No, and I've watched a little bit. I want to watch the live action because this guy.
You should watch the cartoon first because A, it's better, and B, it's
I'll probably watch the live action one only. But anyway,
and that's a shame because the cartoon's better.
Oh, I'm sure it's great. Dave Filoni. I'm sure it's great.
I mean, it's the Star Wars of its time. But kind of like right now with Avatar, it's like, yeah, you got the original Avatar and Legend, but now we're moving on. We got Legend Korra. We're getting past Avatars. Oh, did you freeze? Oh no, you're okay. And I think and sometimes they'll connect, but other times like here's just the saga of this character in this universe. And I think Star Wars will do both. It's like here's an event that leads into the things we know, but also here's the saga of Steve the Jedi.
And you know what? Here's the answer: is I just know which one I'm gonna like more, probably, and be more interested in. Other people are going to like other things. People are interested in other things, and we'll all be one happy fandom. I hope.
I mean, I guess I'll ask you this though: why does all Star Wars have to connect back to the saga, though?
Well, yeah. Why do I want it to?
Well, why do you want it is one thing, but like, do you think it has to? Wanting is one thing. I want a Thrawn trilogy, and I think I'm going to get it. So,
well, that's the thing. I don't know if it has to. I can only answer why I want it to.
Familiarity.
I want it to. Familiarity, and that's the big part of it. But to say, there's a reason. Almost to say this weird kind of we mentioned this a few times. I think we mentioned this a lot when we talked about the old Republican legends. I think. Yeah. Why this weird sort of abstract question that doesn't quite make sense, but why did George Lucas pick that moment in the timeline to start in 1977? And he didn't. The answer isn't he didn't, because he just told a story. And he told the story he consciously halfway through, but he didn't know the first half of it yet fully. He had an idea.
Right.
But why, why is, if Star Wars is a film franchise, why are most of the films devoted to this thing? And that everything, it's also, there is the logical thing of it is the center of gravity that everything built out from. Right? And that was true in Legends too, right? And that's true in Paper Canon for sure. And we're talking about paper and screen together here,
right?
In all this conversation,
right?
Yeah. Just to think why, it's the thing we have the most. Yeah, maybe there's the sense of the thing that we have the most. We've given the most detail and time and attention to it. That it again, I don't want to say it should be, but my internal sense, then it gives me that internal sense that that's the most important moment, right? And again, I know you're going to say it, that can change, that can affect, right? My whole example of Attack of the Clones being a pivotal moment in the life of Anakin Skywalker, because obviously it is, of course it is. But we didn't get that until later,
Well, here's a kind of a kind of
You know?
interesting question. We talked about neutral observers.
Mhm.
Is Star Wars as we watch it a neutral observer, or are we watching, or is it important because this is
Yeah.
we're watching through the eyes of George Lucas? If the camera is an eyeball, then
Yeah.
obviously this is Lucas. We have the things Lucas eyeballs shows us. This is getting weird. Yeah,
I know what you mean. Well,
through
the
one
implied author.
through 1/6, and then obviously 7 through 9 is kind of like mimicry, imply author a little bit,
Yeah.
and then you got the other stuff, and now it's like, well, that was important to George, but what's
Mhm.
important to George isn't what important to everybody else. And let's
True.
face it, in terms of this fandom, and this is kind of, I'll make this the last point.
Yeah.
This is the thing: Star Wars fans are making Star Wars, unless you're Tony Gilroy, and everyone's got a different idea of what's important in Star Wars.
Tony
I don't.
Gilroy Star Wars, J.J. Abrams Star Wars. No offense, but
So
sorry.
it's like
Yeah.
Tony Gilroy
Yeah.
got, it's like Dave Filoni's coming out. We talked about Dave Filoni versus George's differences.
Yeah.
Mangold might have his views of how the Jedi started. Obviously, I know there's going to be story notes, and it's all a big collaborative, happy family. But at the same
Yeah.
time, in terms of the people who decide what stories get made and who don't, what
Mhm.
don't, and who knows what that is. They might not be going, well, George thought that the story of Star Wars was the story of Anakin Skywalker. They're
Yeah.
looking about it as, we have 25,000 years of fake history, and we can make 25,000 years more if we want
Sure.
because of money.
It is a fictional universe. I mean, to say, that's part of it is my Star Wars, and I'm saying this knowing that that's not the gospel.
Oh yeah.
There we go again. My Star Wars is that Anakin Skywalker is the chosen one. And he brings balance to the Force. That everything else is the implications of that. That's already changing. That's already being challenged. Again, my parents' Star Wars was Luke Skywalker is the main character, and that's the thing, and that's the thing that
The
the prequels.
Adventures of Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
That's
So yeah, I mean, shoot, 2054. Again, I do think
just Star
because
Wars.
there's inertia, and by inertia I don't mean, well, maybe I do mean a little bit in the weight of these 9 films and the cultural weight of these 9 films in the real world,
Especially the first 6.
especially the first 6, especially the first 3, but especially the first 6 now.
Mhm.
But I mean, that's another thing to say is those other 3. I think people are going to come to love Rise of Skywalker more than they
Oh
do.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And people are going to. I think the debate over Last Jedi is going to be done.
I hope
People are
so.
going to actually appreciate it.
I hope so.
Because of the real world
Mhm.
conflicts that define that debate.
I'm saying Andor is going to be a special one up in the.
Maybe we'll actually say Andor might have this wide-ranging implications of how we view Star Wars.
Mhm.
How we view the Rebel Alliance. I mean, it really takes up, like Last Jedi, takes up the dark side of heroism, right? Not the dark side. That's an interesting point. There we go. Your dark side is the complicated side of heroism, the difficult of heroism, right? I mean, that speech, not Draven, the other guy, Luthen speech,
Mhm.
So yeah, again, I think 30 years from now, to answer the question, ultimately, I still think the films, they're going to be treated like the most important out of universe. I mean, I guess here, but in universe, I guess here's the question, I mean, here's an interesting, I don't know. There's a thought experiment.
Mhm.
Joel, in your mind,
Yeah.
what is the most important thing to happen in the last 2,000 years in human history?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I don't know. There's so much, man.
Yeah.
I'm going to say.
Since the fall of the Roman Empire. Just say since the fall of the Roman Empire.
Oh, see, that's hard because I feel like there's so many things.
Yeah.
But I guess if I had to pick a pivotal moment,
Mhm.
World War One.
Interesting. World War One. Yeah. And again, I would say the Reformation. Right? I We both have so that maybe there's the answer is that the in-universe characters are all going to have different answers, and someone on the other side of the world in Japan, China, they're going to say neither of those things. I mean, they might say the Reformation or they might say World War II, but yeah. So maybe that's the answer. Out of universe, I think the films are going to consider to be the most important. In universe, but that's the thing. They might explore ways in which it is and ways in which it isn't. To finally come around to agreeing with your point.
Right, and
There it is.
I'll say one more thing, and then I'll stop. I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
always have a thought.
The
I do
time
think
change makes this easier to keep going.
I know. Out of universe, yes, I think 1 through, especially 1 through 6.
Yeah.
Because that's George's. I think he
Mm.
can't. The historical significance will always be there.
Mhm.
But maybe Disney Lucasfilm is like hey, Ryan Johnson, maybe James Mangold, new person that we don't know who's gonna kill it. Hopefully,
Mhm.
they I want to tell my own saga. I want to tell a saga in the past of Star Wars. Again, the
Mhm.
saga of Steve, the
Yep.
Jedi. Can I do that? It doesn't really
Yeah.
connect to the Skywalker saga, but can I tell 1,000, 5,000 years ago there was this great saga. This is
Mhm.
if you want to say these are the stories Luke grew up with.
I mean, Benioff and Weiss, their film, there was going to be a trilogy or something, right? Or a
It's gonna be
series.
2 and then 3. So yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing, So yeah,
So
they're open to it.
yeah. So I think. I'm glad it's not Benioff and Weiss. Thank heavens.
They just
But
kill everyone off for no good reason, Just great.
yeah. But it's like out of universe. There might be a time where it's like the big Lucasfilm thing is like the
Mhm.
saga of Steve, episode 1.
He got to be called Steve.
I hope
Call him
so.
Steve.
I hope so. But
Be called
but
Steve.
yeah.
That'll be hilarious. No,
But
that's
yeah.
that's Tag and Mick are dead. That's a Tag and
Yes.
Mick thing.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
Matt the Radar Technician.
Yes,
One of those.
absolutely. But
Hard
yeah, I
times.
think we've talked about enough of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Star Wars is forever. Star Wars won't die because we live with big media conglomerates that rule over us all. Rome
And
will
their
die
kids
as long as
and
live
kids
Rome.
are inspired by these stories.
And that too. And that too.
There will be a kid. Here's the scary thing.
Mhm.
There will be kids born in 2024
Mhm.
who may be directing a Star Wars in 2054. Hot young director. George Lucas. How old was George when he directed A New Hope?
In his 30s.
Okay. So,
Maybe mid
he
30s.
was young. He was young. I should know this fact, but I forget. That's okay. I have too many facts in my head.
I mean, we got kids who were direct. John Favreau, Dave Filoni, J.J. Abrams, Ryan Johnson. They were kids. And
Yeah.
now they're directing Star
That's my
Wars.
point. Is that's the best reason why this will continue is because it continues to inspire, it inspires my nieces, and they haven't seen a minute of Star Wars. They're still inspired by the toys and the whatever. I think they have the books, those kids card books. They Jedi Brave in every way. They have definitely read that.
Oh, nice. And hopefully not all of the people directing Star Wars are all a bunch of white guys.
Well, that's all. I mean,
Come on, Sharimo Bejanoy.
Yeah,
we believe in you.
Yes.
Well, don't screw this up, Disney / Lucasfilm, whoever.
The Deborah Chow and Sharmino Bejanoy from Toronto.
Yes. Yes.
Gotta put that in.
Oh, and Leslie Headland.
Yes, that's true. She's not from Toronto though. So
Mm.
Where's she from? Is she from US somewhere? She's probably American.
Probably.
Anyways, on that note.
Yes, on that note.
I think that's a great time to wrap this up. This turned out to be a really great conversation. Really great thought experiment, diving into what is important now and what will be important, what's changing. So yeah, Joel, the great conversation, great thought to do this topic. We should do something similar in the future. I don't know what Star Wars look like in 6 years. I don't think it'll be that different questions, different answers. Who knows? But yeah, so yeah, great topic. And everyone in the comments, all the Russian bots, thanks for joining us, padding our numbers, but all the actual humans.
Like the video.
We checked it. Yeah, and let us know what you thought of our conversation. What do you think we'll care about and talk about Star Wars in 2054? Comment below. Let us know on our socials. We'll get to that in a second. Of course, on the Underworld Facebook page as well. Yes, please do give this video a like and a share. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Joel, again, thanks so much. Where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me at JID2021 again, JID2021 on Twitter. Of course, follow us at the Ion Cannon Pod.
At Ion Cannon Pod.
At Ion Cannon Pod. I always put the
Yeah, no.
EYEONCANONPOD.
Yes, that's right. You can follow me on Instagram and Threads at MNEUG1138. Definitely going to have Comic-Con content up there. Anything not Star Wars will probably go there. And then anything Star Wars, I'll probably put on that Ion Cannon Pod on Instagram. Twitter, NEUG485, where I got some soccer takes. I got some Oscars, Barbie takes. I got a bunch of things, a bunch of takes. Yeah, probably, just promote promos. Shout out to Blog TO, which is really, really well-known publication here for plugging our Taylor Swift panel, among other things. So that'll be great. So yeah, please do check me out on the socials there. And of course, at Toronto Comic-Con. If you see me around, if you're there, say hi. 4:15, High Republic 101, Saturday 4:15 in Theater 4, room 202 CD, High Republic 101, 6:15, Queen Taylor, same room, 11 o'clock a.m. on Friday. The intro to publishing with Ash, Dom, and Claudia Gray. That's same room, Theater 4, I believe, 202 CD. Yeah, check us out there, and of course, all our Star Wars Underworld at Toronto Comic Con. It's a smaller con, but we'll be there. We'll have fun. We'll enjoy it. It'll be great. It'll be crammed like sardines in the North Building, but we'll still have fun. It'll be a good time. So check us out then, and of course, the Tractor Beam on Thursday, 12:15 p.m. Eastern, 9:15 a.m. Pacific. We're gonna run through, and then I'll go eat something and go back to work. But we'll have 3 comics to talk about. Maybe we'll figure something out for what we do the next 2 weeks. But yeah, check us out in the Tractor Beam. Then yeah, so again, at Iron Cannon Pod, check out the flagship Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. I'll be watching Taylor, but you can be watching us, or watching, not me, but watching the Star Wars Underworld. Yeah, talking about the Bad Batch. That's what they do. It's how they roll. Of course, yeah, Tractor Beam. Tales from Beyond the Galaxy, I think they've been doing some streaming as well on Wednesdays, just before the Tractor Beam. So check them out. And of course, the Rayside. She's doing stuff every day. She's doing stuff all day, every day. She doesn't stop. Hannah, where is she? She's everywhere. Is the answer to this question. Just putting that out there. But all right, what are we doing? What are we doing next week? Next week, we are talking about one of those clearly pivotal moments in the history of the galaxy. And this one I think its importance is gonna stand the test of time. Execute Order 66. We're finally talking about Order 66. And yeah,
I mean, really, you think so? I mean, I don't think it was that big a deal.
No.
Yeah.
The height of their powers,
Yeah.
rise from the Empire, wipe it out. But yeah, there we go. I'm glad I can read sarcasm across the continent.
Thank you. I'm excited. No, I'm excited.
There we go. Yeah,
Let's
we're talking about this moment in my favorite film of all time, probably the third act, one of the greatest third acts in cinematic history, among other things, Order 66. But Joel, until then, let's blow this thing and head home.